When should you claim Social Security benefits? And I know what you're already thinking, Drew, I'm going to claim at 62, or I'm going to claim on the day I stop working. It's my money and I need it now. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to look at two specific scenarios. I want to look at a married couple. When should you claim Social Security benefits? And I want to look at a single person. When should you claim Social Security benefits? And what we're going to try to do is give you the confidence to know when you should claim Social Security benefits. And you're not going to hear me say, claim at full retirement age for both of them or wait till 70. No. We're going to claim Social Security benefits at the right time for the couple and at the right time for the single person based on their specific retirement needs, their specific retirement income, their expenses, and their specific life. Isn't that what you would want when it comes to claiming Social Security benefits based on you, not on some article from Forbes? Because keep in mind, if you claim Social Security at 62, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. If you claim at 67, you're going to get 100% of your full retirement benefit. And if you delay until 70, you're going to get 124% of your full retirement benefit. I call this overachieving broccoli eating. But just because you're eating broccoli doesn't mean you claim Social Security at the right time. Maybe you like chocolate cake and you claimed at 62. I like chocolate cake with a little bit of peanut butter. And so we need to know when is the best time to claim Social Security for us. So let's get into two specific scenarios. We're going to start with a single and then we're going to go to the married couple. All right, so let's look at Ben, and he's asking the question, when should I claim Social Security benefits? Now, Ben is single, and so deciding on when to claim Social Security benefits is going to be on me, myself, and I. Because when Ben goes into Social Security, when Ben goes into retirement as a single person, there will be no one else, no other retirement assets, no other retirement income except his. So making the decision based on me, myself, and I is very, very important. So let's look at this. Let's go through the facts first, and then we'll decide when to claim Social Security. So here we go. We got Ben. Now he's in real estate and his current gross monthly salary is about $3,000 a month, which is $36,000 a year. Now he does work on commission, so he's got a base salary plus commission. All right. Now his projected retirement age is 55 years old. So we're 53. We're going to retire at 55. What do we need to do when claiming Social Security, right? We got 2 years before we retire. If we take Social Security at 67, we've got 12 years before we get to Social Security. If we retire at 55 and we claim at 62, then we've only got, 7 years or 8 years really before we get to Social Security. So we've got to determine what makes the most sense. For Ben, he might need to work a little longer too, depending on the strategy or depending on what we're looking at. So again, Social Security for him is going to be based on what he does. So we're looking at a Social Security at 67 of $2,900. Now we do have projected COLA on this at 2.58%. Now for my planning, what I'm not going to do is increase the Social Security with inflated dollars. Now, if you're in your 30s or 40s and you're trying to plan out Social Security, obviously there's a couple factors that are out there, like is Social Security going to be the same as it is today? But another thing that you want to look at is future dollars. What's your dollar going to be worth at 62, 67, 70 if you're in your 40s? You can do that on SSA.gov's website, Social Security Administration.gov's website. We do that a lot when we're doing a Your Financial EKG, but I want to be real conservative in my planning, because if the plan works on a conservative level, then I know it's going to even work better when we get a cost of living increases, when the market does better than we're projecting and all that stuff, okay? Now, we don't have any pensions. So if we go to assets, we've got a lot of different assets here. Let's just basically go to the numbers. We've got $880,000. Okay, so we've got $880,000. We're making a contribution to a 401k of $360 per month with a company match. We're not making any other contributions at this point. We're going to retire at 55. Okay, so we're 53, we're going to retire at 55. We're trying to determine when are we going to claim Social Security. Now, our portfolio, we're going to look at a 6% rate of return. Now, the reason I'm going to use a 6% rate of return for my projection is because Ben is a better investor than most. He's pretty good at what he does. I'm not saying he's Warren Buffett, but you know, the market for the last 100 years or so has averaged 10 to 11%. Let's say that's 8 to 9 with inflation. So we're going to back up about 3% to 6. We could be even more conservative. And again, when we go through a financial EKG, we're even more conservative in our projections. I'm usually looking at 4 and 5%, but for Ben, he wanted 6%. So we're going to use the 6% for this scenario. Okay. But again, what we can look at, well, let's just do this for you guys. Let's say before retirement, we get 6% on everything but the bank, right? The bank, what are we going to earn at the bank? Let's say we earn 2% at the bank. Okay. But let's say after retirement, let's say we only want to earn 4%. So what we can do is we can actually project out 2 separate rates of return. So what the client is able to do, or what you're able to see in this case on YouTube, is I'm 37. I'm investing more for growth. But if I were to retire, my investments should not look the same today as they do when I retire. So 6 to 4. Okay, so we'll look at that and see if that changes our strategy with claiming Social Security benefits. So our portfolio weighted average right now is about 5.97%. That's going to go down, obviously, when we get into retirement. All right. Now, from an expense standpoint, Ben has been very, what's the word I want to look for? He has looked at his expenses over and over and over again, and he has been very diligent about what he is spending. We're going to look at $3,500 a month with inflation. 3.27 is going to be our inflation. Now, keep in mind, $3,500 a month for a single person might be right where you're at. And we're using an inflation rate of 3.27%, which is the 109-year average for inflation. So $3,500 today is not going to be $3,500 10, 15, 20 years from now. So that plays a big factor in when we're going to claim Social Security, right? When do we want that Social Security check to kick in to help us with our inflated expenses so that we don't have to pull out as much from our retirement income accounts? Again, we're going to look at all this here in just a second. Now, from a cash flow standpoint, we have multiple different cash flows that we're looking at. We want $55,000 worth of income over and above what we're guaranteeing. We want extra income for travel. We've got some new cars built in here. We've got an inheritance of $175,000 built in, and we've got a little part-time work of $1,250. Now, Ben's going to work part-time, not at his current job because it's stressful. He's going to work part-time because he's a single guy. All right. He's got one son. The son's going to be grown. He just wants to work just to keep his mind sharp. That doesn't mean you have to do that. A lot of people will comment on this video and say, Drew, you didn't help him retire because he worked part-time. That's what he wants to do. I'm not the one dictating his life. I just talked to a gentleman in California this week who said, hey, Drew, I've been laid off. I want to know, can I retire? And I do not want to work anymore. That video is to come, keep in mind. So we need to look at all these different factors. And so that's what we're going to look at here in cash flows. So we go to pre-retirement, and essentially we've got $880,000 currently. We've got about $938,000 when we get to 55. We go to retirement, and at 55, we're out of money at 75 years old. This is not the scenario that we want. Now, we do have a condo. It's not on here yet, but that's a protected asset. The condo would be here. He's looking at currently moving, so we're not adding that into our scenario yet because we don't know what that's going to look like. We're trying to do a cash change. And obviously for Ben, we've got a lot more factored in here than most people do. We've got there's a new car factored in. We've got other new cars factored in. We've got this inheritance coming in. So there's a lot of things that are factored in that we might not normally factor into a scenario because he's been so diligent about this. But what we want to look at is this. Does claiming Social Security at 67 make this scenario the best? I don't know. So let's look at changing our Social Security scenario. So we're going to look at starting Social Security at a different age. And so what we're going to do within the software is it's going to tell us, hey, this is the best time to claim Social Security. Okay, so for Ben, claiming at 67 makes the most sense in this scenario. Let's see what happens if we back it up to 62. Well, he's at 75, claiming at 67. We're out of money at 74, claiming at 62. What about 70? Now we're out at 72. That's because we're draining our retirement assets too much early, right? We're taking so much of our retirement savings that it's drawing down these accounts even before we get to Social Security. So for Ben, 67 is when he should claim Social Security. But that's not the only thing we need to look at. We might have to retire a little later. And I know that I'm going to be struck by lightning because I said that, especially in the comment section. But he is too young to retire with the amount of assets that he has. As a fiduciary, I'm just telling you the truth. So we need to look at that. So his retirement date right now is 10 of 2025. It's 55 years. What if we go to 2027? What if we retire at 57? Now that pushes him 2 more years. What if we go to 60? Oh, look at that. If we work till 60, it gets us all the way to 85. Now I'm feeling a lot better about what's going on. So here's what we're doing. We're claiming Social Security at 67, and we're going to work an extra 5 years. That's going to get him to 85 years old. At that point, we've got the house. We can do a reverse mortgage. We can maybe work part-time a little longer. Remember, he's open to working part-time. And again, he's going to travel and enjoy himself. He's talking about working. He's from Colorado, maybe working at Coors Field or Mile High Stadium, part-time usher. That's what I want to do. I want to usher at Tropicana Field or whatever it's called when I get to that age. Watch some free baseball. Hey, can I help you to your seat? What's your number there? You know, that's fun for me, right? So in his case, we've got to look at these different factors. And there's so many things that we can look at. You know, we can look at contributions. Can he increase his contributions? What about the withdrawal order? Does it make sense to change the withdrawal order on his investments? Home downsize. We've talked about that. We're looking at that. HECM, home equity conversion mortgage. That's a reverse mortgage. Does that make sense? Protected asset sale. Do you have gold? Do you have collector cars, whatever? Is there something that's going to help push this maybe into the 90s? But 85 is still pretty good. So this is what I'm talking about. So for Ben, as a single guy, when does it make the most sense for him to claim Social Security benefits? And if he said 62, he would be wrong based on his current scenario because there's so much going into it that we need to look at. All right, when should I claim Social Security benefits? I am a married couple. We're going to look at Jim and Sandy. They're asking the question, when should we claim Social Security benefits? And we need to go through their numbers, their personal retirement savings, when they want to retire, what are their Social Security benefits, to get a good idea of when they should claim Social Security benefits. So let's go through this together. So here we go. We've got Jim and Sandy. Now, they're both going to retire at 60 and 59 years old. So they're 53 and 52 years old, and they make pretty good money. Jim makes $150,000 a year. Sandy makes $120,000 a year. So they make very, very good money. So we're asking the question, when should we claim Social Security benefits? Now, for them, they both get $3,500 a month at their full retirement age. So we can see that if they claim at 62, they're going to get 70% of their full retirement benefit. If they claim at 67, they're going to get 100% of that $3,500. That's their full retirement benefit. At 70, they're going to get 124%. That's $4,340. And you can see here how they can claim at any time between 62 and 70. They can claim at 64, 69, 65. It doesn't really matter as long as you're claiming between 62 and 70. But the question is, when should you claim Social Security benefits? So we're going to put it at 67 for both of them right now. And we're just going to say, hey, we're going to claim at 67 years old. That's our full retirement age. They're going to retire at 60 and 59. Okay? Now, from an asset standpoint, we've got right at $1.1 million saved for retirement. So we've got $1.1 million saved for retirement amongst various retirement accounts. Okay, you can see this. We've got non-qualified money. That's your freedom fund, right? You want to have a freedom bucket of money, the freedom to retire whenever you want. This is a little side note for you. If you're saving for retirement, if you're putting money into a 401k, a Roth IRA, if you're getting your match from your company, if you got extra leftover money, put that into a taxable brokerage account. Put that into an account that's just in your name. My name is Drew Blackston. It goes into a Drew Blackston individual account or a Drew and Valerie Blackston joint account. And that money, we can use it as a freedom fund, the freedom to retire whenever we want. If we want to retire at 55, we can use that money for retirement income without having to tap into our 401k or our IRA. Remember, if you take out money under the age of 59 and a half from your IRA or your 401k, your 403b, your TSP, you will pay a 10% penalty unless you follow some specific rules like the rule of 55 for 401ks or a 72T for an IRA. But let's just assume we don't want to use those specific rules. We can use a non-qualified brokerage account and we can just take out retirement income whenever we want. If we needed to buy a car, boom, we pull it out. We need to repair our roof because a hurricane rips it off. Boom, we can do that. And we don't have to worry about the IRS breathing down our neck, asking for their tax dollars. Okay? We have a 401k, which we're doing the max contribution. We have a TSP, which we're doing the max contribution. And we have 2 Roth IRAs that are being contributing to right now as well. Now, from a portfolio weighted average, we're going to look at a 5% rate of return until we get to retirement. And then at retirement, we're going to go to a 4% rate of return. So we're going to be a little bit more aggressive, and then we're going to basically pump the brakes on our growth prospects as we get into retirement. Now, I'm not telling you when you get into retirement, you give up investment growth. No. You just shift. I call it the guardrail rule. We're going to figure out what rate of return that Jim and Sandy need to earn for the rest of their life to never make their money run out, or at least get into an age that they feel comfortable with. And we don't need to invest more than that rate of return. It's called a guardrail. What if you're going down, we got I-4 here. I-4 connects Tampa to Orlando. I take my 3 kids and my wife to Disney. We go Tampa to Orlando. We drive I-4. If I had a helicopter, I would use it. But I-4, no other way to get to Orlando, as far as I know. If you know another way to get to Orlando from Tampa, let me know. We drive I-4. The speed limit on I-4 is 70 miles an hour. People think it's 80, but it's 70 miles an hour. If I go 85 or 90, I'm going too fast. 2 things will happen. Either I'll get pulled over by the police or I could cause an accident. Okay, both are bad. If I go 45 or 50, 2 things can happen. I'm going to get to my destination a lot slower, and I could also cause an accident. You want to go the speed that the limit sets. It's the same with your investments. If we need to earn 4 to 5%, let's say your rate of return that you need to earn for the rest of your life is 5%. Why are you going to invest for 8 or 9? 2 things could happen. You could invest and run out of money, right? Because the market does this and you take it out too soon. Or you can invest really well and the market kills it and you turn your $1 million into $4 million by the time you're dead. What are the odds that one of those is going to happen? It's probably 50-50. What I would rather do is drive 5%. Let's stay in our lane. Let's stay in our guardrail. Let's make sure with confidence that we are not going to run out of money. Because why take the risk? Warren Buffett says this: do not risk what you have for something that you do not need. Okay, that's good. All right, so let's look at this. We got $1.5 million. Now, from an expense standpoint, expenses, we've got baseline expenses of $5,000 a month. Okay, so this is like your utilities, your food, some fun in there. $5,000 with inflation of 3.27%. We've got healthcare expenses of $1,000. 3.27 inflation, even though healthcare inflation is probably more like 6 or 7%, usually about 2% higher than what the nominal rate is for the Fed. We're going to do that till 2035. That's when Jim and Sandy both are on Medicare. We've got Medicare, $750. They want to factor in a Medicare supplement. When you go on Medicare, you have 2 choices. You have a supplement and advantage plan. That's going to be secondary to your primary coverage, which is Medicare, okay? With a supplement, it costs a monthly premium. So we're going to calculate $750 because we're going to have our Medicare supplement premium and we're going to have our Part D premium, which is our drugs. If you go on an advantage plan, most of the time there's no cost on a monthly basis. Drugs are included in that, but there are copays and deductibles. Either way, we're going to factor in $750 a month. And they want to travel. We're going to factor in $1,500 a month for travel, and that's going to end in 2053. So we're going to go from 2023 to 2053 for travel. Okay? So $6,500 is our current monthly expenses. Now, when we get to retirement, we start at 53 and 52. When we get to retirement, we're projected to have $2 million. So I have about $131,000 in the bank, $470 in our 401k, $211 in a TSP. We've got our Roth IRAs there of $134 each, and that non-qualified freedom fund of $342,000 plus our IRA is $617. That's $2 million. Okay? We go to retirement. Now here's what I want to look at. We're 59 and 60 years old when we retire. Here's Social Security kicking on. First for Jim and then for both of them, $7,000. Now, you might notice that I did not give Social Security a cost of living adjustment from 53 and 52 until 67. The reason I didn't do that is because I wanted to be conservative in my planning. You can go to the Social Security website, ssa.gov. You can plug in your numbers. You can get an inflated figure, meaning you can get future dollars. So you can say, what's a dollar today going to be at Social Security, a dollar then? Here's the thing I want to point out. You see this year right here, 2033, 2033? At the current moment in time, 2033 is when Social Security is projected to have a loss of benefits, meaning you could have a 23 to 25% reduction in your Social Security benefit. When are they claiming Social Security? 2037. So as a fiduciary, as a financial advisor, I don't want to do anything to steer them off course, especially late in their 60s. So we're going to look at not inflating Social Security on the assumption that Social Security is going to change. And if they don't fix it, it's going to fix itself by lessening benefits. Okay? So we've got $2 million. We're claiming Social Security here at 66, 67. And then essentially, really good plan, we're out of spendable assets at 92 and 91. Okay? So here we go. Here's our income, Social Security, there's taxes withheld, right? Here's our expenses at that time, about $20,000 a month. Now keep in mind, here they were, and then we dropped off at 83 and 82. That's when they wanted to start that travel. So you see how I went from 17,994 down to 14,612 a month? This is inflation, but then we had the travel drop off. Still got Medicare in there, still got baseline expenses, things like that. But we had the travel drop off. So now at 92 and 91, we're out of spendable assets. We still got this home, right? We can do a reverse mortgage, downsize, whatever. So this is a pretty good plan for them. But here's the thing I want you to think about. What about like long-term care? And we're going to get to Social Security here in just a second. I want you to think about this. So they're in Illinois. Let's look at 2 years of care in a long-term care facility. We pay that long-term care here at 80. Let's just say this is for Jim. Now we're out of money at 82. So now it becomes a bigger factor, like when do I claim Social Security benefits, right? Because like if something happens to Jim, odds are that one of them is going to need some kind of care. It might not be long-term care. It might be informal care, which is like the spouse taking care of the spouse or a child taking care of a parent. But something's going to happen, and we need to look at that. So let's go back. Let's go back to retirement. And let's see when it makes sense to claim Social Security based on their statistics. So we go to Social Security Start, and what we're trying to determine is, does it make sense to take Social Security at full retirement age? Remember, if you take it 62, you get 70% of your full retirement benefits. If you take from 62 to 66, you get a reduced benefit, but it's increased. If you take Social Security benefits at 67, you get your full retirement benefit, which is 100%. And if you wait till 70, you get 124% of your benefit. Keep in mind, if you're still working, you do not want to claim Social Security between 62 and 66 and invest it. A lot of times people in the comment section will say, well, take Social Security at 62 and invest it. If you're working, do not do that because there's a Social Security test for income. And if you make more than what the income limit is, they're going to take back $1 for every $2 you make. Boop, boop. Don't do that, okay? Now let's look at this. Oh, wow, different. So for them, the software is saying take it 70. And here's the reason why. It takes them from 92 and 91 to 93 and 92. Not a big difference. but enough. Now let's do this. What if we did it at 62 for both of them? It actually drops them back a year. Not a huge difference, right? 2 years for Jim, 2 years from Sandy, 90 to 89. So we need to make sure as we're stepping into, they're 53 and 52, so a lot's going to change between now and when they take Social Security. But what I want you to see is the Social Security optimization saying, hey, take it at 70 to increase an extra year of income. That might not be a big deal to you, but when you're 90, you need an extra year. You don't necessarily want to say, hey, I want to do reverse mortgage now. I want to sell my house and downsize. It's a big deal. So claiming Social Security is a big deal. The other thing we got to think about, they're married, right? If they both claim at 70, they're going to get $4,340. That's in today's dollars, right? $4,340. If Jim dies, Jim goes, he dies. Sandy is going to lose his Social Security. She's going to get hers, but she's going to lose his. Now, we're assuming they're exact because they both are higher earners right now. But so we're going to lose about $4,300 a month or whatever it is at that point. So for a married couple, and I'm talking to domestic partnerships as well, if you live with somebody and you guys pay bills together, you need to make sure you're claiming Social Security at the right time, because when one of you goes, one of the Social Security is going to go. And we want to make sure that you can continue your lifestyle, right? I like the old Jim Farley, right? Living in a van down by the river. What I've noticed is that one of the spouses can live in a van down by the river, right? And one of the spouses likes to continue their lifestyle, the travel, the eating out. And a lot of times, once you become single, you might eat out a little bit more. You might spend a little bit more money out with friends. You might spend the same amount, just doing it differently. So we need to have an exact plan for them. All right. So listen, I hope this has helped. I hope this helped you decide when you should claim Social Security benefits. If you want to get in touch with us, all the information is below. God bless. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye. Should I use my IRA first when I retire and delay Social Security, or should I claim Social Security benefits when I retire and delay pulling money out of my IRA, or should I do a combination of both? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I've got Ryan and Tasha, and they're asking you the question, should we claim Social Security benefits when we retire, or should we use our retirement investing accounts first and then use Social Security later in life, or delay our Social Security benefits? Because keep in mind, if you claim Social Security at 62, you're going to get 70% of your full retirement benefit. Now, keep in mind, between ages 62 and 67, you can claim at any time, 63, 64, 65, 66. It's an increased benefit, but it's not your full benefit. Now, at 67, you can claim Social Security benefits and get 100% of your full retirement benefit. And if you delay until 68, 69, 70, if you're an overachiever, a broccoli, asparagus, cauliflower eater, you'll get 124% of your Social Security benefit at 70. Okay, you get an 8% increase between ages 67 and 70 per year, 124%, which is awesome. But does it make sense to do that? And does looking at the optimal time to collect Social Security based on software versus common sense, which one makes the most planning sense for your retirement? That's what we're going to look at. So let's get into this right now. So I've got Ryan and Tasha. Tasha is already retired. Ryan works in construction. He makes $60,000 a year. We get about a 1% increase in his salary every year. He's 60 years old and he wants to retire at 62. So he wants to retire at the day he can claim Social Security benefits. And the reason he wants to do that is because he knows he can step out of his construction job and step into a guaranteed income stream from Social Security if he decides to do that. Now, can he retire at 62? Can he claim Social Security right away? We're going to look at those, so hang on. But that's the plan for Ryan. Now, Ryan also is very handy. He has a handyman job, which we call a side hustle, where he makes about $12,000 a year. So he is working basically two jobs, full-time construction and I would say not half-time, but a little bit of a part-time job doing his side hustle. He wants to continue doing his side hustle even when he retires. It's something that he enjoys, and it also brings in the added extra income that Ryan and Tasha need, and it's going to allow them to retire a little earlier. And you're going to see throughout this video, Ryan and Tasha don't have $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million saved for retirement. They've got between $200,000 and $300,000 saved for retirement. And why are we looking at Ryan and Tasha with $200,000 and $300,000 saved for retirement? Well, let's look at the Vanguard statistics right now. This is How America Saves report for 2024. And let's go down here to these ages right here. This is your average save for retirement at Vanguard, and this is the median save for retirement at Vanguard. And I know that they might have multiple IRAs, maybe an IRA at Fidelity, a 401k at Vanguard, and an IRA at Morgan Stanley. If you'd like some more in-depth data, you can go to the Federal Reserve's Consumer Report, and you can see that the average retirement savings for Americans in these age ranges, 45 to 65, is not much higher than what you find on the Vanguard and the Fidelity retirement summary reports that come out each year, which is why I use this data, okay? So the average balance, okay, retirement balance for ages 45 to 54 at Vanguard is $168,000. Now that's a single person. Obviously you can double that for a married couple. Ages 55 to 64, the average is $244, and 65 plus, it's $272. Okay, not so bad. But you and I both know that the averages are skewed. The median is really all that matters. So the median retirement account balance at Vanguard for ages 45 to 54 is $60,763. For ages 55 to 64, it's $87,571. And ages 65 plus, it's $88,488. So we're actually looking at some real numbers for Ryan and Tasha, real working, hard Americans who have just tried to put their kids through school, save money into their 401ks, pay off their home mortgage, and just live a life and, try to buy groceries and do things they enjoy. So that's why we're looking at Ryan, Tasha today, and we're going to look at some real life values, and you're probably in the same position as Ryan and Tasha. All right, so now let's go to their Social Security benefits. So Ryan's primary Social Security benefit at age 67 would be $2,422. For Tasha, her primary benefit at 67 would be $1,800. Now, we just talked about if you claim Social Security benefits early versus late, what are those values? So here we are. Here's Ryan. $2,422 is his age 67 full retirement benefit. So if he claims at 62, $1,695 would be his 62 benefit, okay? For Tasha, if she claims at 62, would be $1,260. That's 70% of their full retirement benefit. At age 70, if he delayed, it would be $3,003 for Ryan. For Tasha, it would be $2,232. So you see there's that 124% gross benefit, okay? Now, Social Security outlines this on their website. This is the Social Security Administration. If you were born after the year 1960, this is how much you can claim. So if Ryan were to claim at 63, he would get 75% of his Social Security benefit. So we go back here and you can see that. Here's 63, 1817, okay? Now, if he were to claim at 64, it's 80%. So you see how it keeps going up. At age 64, it's 1938. It's going up. Now, let me show you one misnomer that doesn't come into play in this scenario, but I want to make it very clear because a lot of people get confused about this. Spousal Social Security benefits. A spousal Social Security benefit is your right as a spouse to claim Social Security benefits based on your spouse's higher earning record. So what I mean by that is if you are a spouse who stayed home took care of the kids, or maybe you had some sort of disability, or you just didn't make enough Social Security credits, or you had a lower paying job and your spouse's Social Security is more than half of yours, you have the ability to claim a spousal Social Security benefit. So if your spouse claims at age 67, you can claim up to half of their Social Security benefit. So for example, if your spouse's Social Security benefit at 67 is $3,000, you can claim $1,500, just so long as they claim at 67 and you claim at 67. Because if you claim earlier than that, the spousal benefit will be less. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if you claim Social Security benefits as the higher earning spouse at 62, you'll receive 70% of your full retirement benefit. Your spouse's retirement benefit would be reduced to 32.5%. So you see that? Not half of the 70, but 32.5. So understand your spousal benefits. And also there's divorce benefits, widow benefits, and all that. Again, don't want to get into Social Security on this video. We got a lot of great videos on Social Security, but spousal benefits, something to really understand. And so in this first example, we're going to take money out of our IRA first, and we're going to delay until 67 for Social Security. Okay, so we're going to delay our Social Security, and we're just going to see what the numbers look like. So we've got our job, we've got our side hustle, and we're delaying Social Security until 67. Now let's talk about assets. So from an asset standpoint, we've got a joint account at the bank of $5,000. We got $5K in the bank. We've got a Fidelity IRA, of which we help manage for Ryan, of $195,000. This is a rollover of an old 401k. Okay, so we had an old 401k. It was rolled into Fidelity. When he contacted us, he said, hey, I want help managing this account. I don't really know what I'm doing. And so we, as custodians with Fidelity, we're helping him out with that. Okay, now, he also has a 401k at his job. He previously changed jobs. He's got $15,000 in his 401k. Now, contribution standpoint, he's putting in about, what is this, 28? Let me get out of this screen. Actually, I can't see it as well. Let's go to this other screen. I can see it a little bit better here. He's putting in 28% of his income into his 401k. Now, he's not getting any matches. So the company he works for does no matches for the 401k. He's putting in 28%. The reason he's doing that, kids are gone, their expenses are very low, as you'll see, and so he's able to put in a lot of money. He's really trying to save a ton of money for him and Tasha so that they can retire, okay? So he's putting in a lot more. Now, keep in mind, if you're saving for retirement, a good rule of thumb is you want to save 10 to 15% of your gross income for retirement. So if you make $100,000 a year, $10,000 to $15,000 is a good rule of thumb for you to use. Now, he's saving 28%. Can you go to 15? Can you go to 20? Can you go to 25? Now, I don't want you eating pork and beans in order to save for retirement. But in Ryan's case, he understands that Social Security is like right over the hump, right? He's climbing that mountain. He can see the finish line. And so him and Tasha are going to make some sacrifices so he can put more money into his pre-tax 401k, which we'll talk a little bit about that, into his 401k, and he can save more money. Okay, now he does not have the option of a Roth 401k, unfortunately. So it's a very stripped down 401k at his job. And so, you know, Roth conversions and things like that might make sense in the future, especially when their income is lower. But we'll get into a lot of that. Now, from a real estate standpoint, they've got a home worth $240,000. They live here in Florida. They don't have a mortgage. They've worked really hard to pay that off. They have sacrificed the amount of money they have up here in their assets to pay off their mortgage, because Ryan understood that having a mortgage-free home or not having a mortgage in retirement was critical for him being able to retire at 62. One of his comments to me was, I see a lot of my fellow coworkers, 66, 67, 68, 69 years old, still working. Now, he's in a kind of a construction job that is not as heavy laden, or it's not as heavy as you would think. But even as an older gentleman, he doesn't want to be doing this until he's 67, 68, 69 years old. He wants to get out at 62. He's got kids all over the country. He wants to enjoy those children. Now, from a rate of return standpoint, we're looking at a rate of return of 5% before retirement and 4% after retirement. Now, these are just projected out values. Now, I understand that the market has averaged about 8% the last 50 years, right? A 60-40 model, 60% equity, 40% bond, the old 60-40 plain vanilla portfolio, which has worked very, very well the last 50 years, has averaged about 8.5%. That's wonderful. I'm not going to project out 8.5%. But as Ryan and I do our quarterly reviews, as we update the EKG, we will update the values on the EKG so our projections are aligned with the actual numbers in his retirement investing accounts. Now, my question is, are you doing a quarterly review with your advisor, and are you updating your financial plan every quarter? Because if not, that's a question you need to be asking yourself, especially as you get closer to retirement. All right, so total, we have spendable assets of $215,000 and we have protected assets of $240,000. So we have spendable assets, our retirement assets of $215,000. Remember, we're asking the question, can I retire with $215,000? And the reason we're doing that is because if you look at the average American, he's actually higher than I would say the median American family's at. And you can go to the Federal Reserve and you can get the consumer data and you can see that on your own. And so for him, he's a hardworking American. We're going to help him retire. All right. So his expenses are really easy. Basically, we've got baseline expenses of $3,000. So we don't have any mortgage, no car payments, nothing like that. We've got $3,000 in monthly expenses, funds included in that. Okay, so his fund is included in the $36,000 that Ryan and Tasha need on a yearly basis. Now, the biggest expense that you're going to face in retirement is healthcare, and that's something we've got to look at. So for them, when he retires in January of 2026, we've got health insurance. So we're going to project out $800 a month in health insurance. Now, it could be lower based on subsidies, but we're going to go with $800 a month for basically a bronze plan or maybe even a rust plan at this point. $800 a month until he gets on Medicare. Now, once they're both on Medicare, we're going to say Medicare supplement for $500 a month. So Medicare supplement is going to cost around $200. A Part D plan, D as in dog for drugs, is going to cost about $50. So we're going to say $500 for both of them on Medicare, and that's going to go in perpetuity. So we're going to do like a Part G plan, a Medicare Part D insurance for the drugs, and that's going to be $500. So we're going to have a step down in the cost of health insurance, but it's still got to be calculated. A lot of times when people come to me, this is the main thing they miss, health insurance. So we want to make sure we're exact on that. And we want to make sure that we are accurate because the health insurance costs are rising at 7% a year. Now, from a tax standpoint, this is really simple. So his taxes aren't really that crazy. Let's go to 2025. He's in the state of Florida, so we don't have any state income tax, which is really nice. Here's his wages, $67,550. Qualified contributions, he's putting $15,554 into his 401k, so his gross income's $52,045. Now, current standard deduction, $29,200, which can change based on the tax code. So his taxable income's $22,845. You see that, how we got there? Wages, qualified contributions, gross income, deduction, taxable income. So we have base tax, over, and then we have overbase and overbase tax. So his total tax is $2,284 federal. Okay, we divide that into his income, and he's in the 4.39 projected federal effective tax bracket, right? So his effective tax rate is 4.39%, which is really good. So from a tax standpoint, we could look at this strategy-wise and ask, would it make sense to do some Roth conversions? Especially with that IRA that's at Fidelity. Could we do some Roth conversions, and would that help him down the line? We'll look at that. But right now we're trying to answer the question, do we take Social Security first, delay our IRA, or do we take our IRA first, delay Social Security, or do we do a combination of both? So let's keep moving forward, and then we'll go through some of these. Again, this is gonna be a little bit of a longer video, so hang out till the end because we're gonna go through a lot of different scenarios. I got some time today to talk to y'all. So pre-retirement. So this is gonna be where he's at now until he retires. Okay, so basically, we're at 61 and 62. This is when we're going to retire from our job. So $6,000 is his gross monthly pay. So we've got the construction plus the side hustle, right? So for that 1 year, we're basically making or positive cash flow while he's working and making a side hustle. So he doesn't need to take out any money from investments or from his bank account based on his monthly expenses. But as soon as he retires, we still have the side hustle, right? That's $1,000. But now our expenses are $3,123. That's inflation. And we've got the health insurance in there. And our net income's only $880. So we've got to take out $2,243 from our retirement investments. Now, this is what I want you to watch, because what are we doing here? We're delaying Social Security until 67, okay? He's got $249,000, but look what happens between now and 67. He goes from $249,000 down to $93,439. And then his wife, when Tasha starts taking Social Security, they're at $84,287. That's a huge drop to delay Social Security. Now, at this point, when Tasha gets on Social Security, we start to grow our assets again. 88, 91, let's go over to retirement, because now the software says, hey, they're fully retired, no more side hustle. But again, look at this. 91, 90, at 72, it's 87, it starts to go down again. So he really drains his assets to wait to claim Social Security, and we're out of money at 85 and 83. Now we have our home, but we're out of money. So now the question becomes, do we delay Social Security and take money out of our IRA? The software, I don't know what it says optimally yet. We're going to get to that. But from a common sense standpoint, I would say that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't want Ryan and Tasha to have to go back to work. And I also don't want to give them the advice, you have to work longer. Everybody puts in the comment section, Drew's just going to tell them to work longer. Well, you know what? I don't have pixie dust. I wish I did. I go to Disney World, it's right down the road, but I ain't got no pixie dust, right? I can't work any magic. The only magic I got is God's greatest gift outside of Jesus is compound interest. That's the only magic I got, compound interest, right? And I'm hoping that, the reason we're doing this planning, because we want to make sure we don't run into any issues, right? I love. Proverbs 21:5 says, good planning and hard work leads to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. So that's why we're having a plan to get you to retirement, through retirement, protect your ability to stay in retirement. And if you want a financial EKG, go to the description below. Let's get together and do this. Okay, so we're out of money at 85 and 83. We basically need a rate of return of 7.24% to make this work. Now, we're probably going to average more than 4% in retirement. But I don't know what markets are going to return in the future, right? I don't know national debt and Social Security and Medicare and all these programs. I don't know what's going to return. And what I don't want to do is put Ryan into this situation. This is U.S. News and Report. It says about 1 in 4 U.S. adults 50 and older who aren't yet retired expect to never retire. Never retire. Well, I don't want to put Ryan in that situation. I want to get him retired, okay? So now we want to ask the question, when is the most optimal time to take Social Security? So let's let the software figure out when the most optimal time to take Social Security is, and then let's look at that strategy to see if that makes common sense. All right, so now let's look at doing a small Roth conversion in Ryan's IRA. Now keep in mind, when you're doing a Roth conversion, it doesn't have to be $25,000, $50,000 a year. It could be a small amount, and that's what I want to show you. So we're still going to take Social Security at 62, but what we're going to do now is we're going to do a $5,000 transfer. So this is our Roth conversion. We're going to do it for as long as we can. So that's why it says insufficient funds, because we're just going to run this all the way out as far as we can. We're going to do $5,000 a year until the account's basically empty. So right there, we're empty, okay? Because we've moved everything over to the Roth conversion account, or we've paid it out for retirement income. So we're going from the IRA to a Roth conversion account. So we save and close this. So we go to retirement, and look at this. We're actually out of money about the same time, 91 and 89. Okay, so not a big difference in doing the Roth conversions, but there's a little difference. Let's look at RMDs. So remember the original RMD. Now actually, you know what? It's better just to show you. So let's go to retirement. Let's go to RMDs. All right, so here was our original RMD. Taking Social Security at 62, everything's saying pre-tax. Ryan's first RMD is $12,991, okay? Now, over here, doing the required minimum distribution or doing the Roth conversion, when he gets to take his required minimum distribution, his first one is $88,547. That's pretty good, right? So we've lowered the required amount. Now, keep in mind, we're running this to 91 and 89. But what if they both passed away around 85? Well, there's $149,000 in the account at 85, but it's all basically Roth account. It's all tax-free. That's only doing a $5,000 conversion. Let's go back over here. This is not doing any conversions. Let's go to 85. And there's 168, so there's more in the account at this point. But look at it. It's basically all IRAs. And so now it's all passing taxable. So it's not a huge shift, but it's just a little change that can make a big difference in the overall planning of your retirement. So I hope this video has helped. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. So I'm 36 at the taping of this video, and let's look at where I'm invested at 36, because this is how I've been invested for 15 years now. And so this is a good example for younger individuals. So let's use the S&P 500. So the S&P 500, and I'm going to use VU, which is the Vanguard S&P 500 ETF. So this is the S&P 500 ETF. So the majority of your assets, if you're younger, need to be in this. But as you continue to get older, you want to transition your investments. I look at it like this. Boom. I'm all S&P 500. I'm really trying to grow my assets. I'm really trying to make a lot of money in the market and in my retirement funds. But as I get older, mid-40s, 50s, 60s, I want to start transitioning those assets to something that's going to be more conservative. There's a thing called sequence of return risk, which means as you retire or when you retire, there's a risk that the first couple years of your retirement, the market is going to do bad. And that could throw your retirement into a whole tizzy. And I've done some videos on how to retire in down markets and things like that. You can check them out on YouTube. But if we are transitioning our investments, if we are anticipating bad markets, even if they don't come, we're protecting ourselves in the event of market downturn. So this is where I'm at right now. But as I get older, I want to have a transition from here down to, say, some sort of conservative fund. Now that could be a bond fund. And I don't know where fixed income is at currently when you're listening to this video. So it really depends on where interest rates are at, what type of bonds you want. Obviously, if interest rates are rising, you want to be in very short-term bonds. If interest rates are peaking, it's okay to be in longer-term bonds, but bonds are considerably conservative. You also have things like fixed annuities, which get a lot of play right now for paying out income. Those are conservative. Again, I'm not trying to sell you an annuity. I'm just trying to give you ideas from a transition standpoint. And there's also real estate, when they call them REITs. Now, you don't want to have all your money in this or this. Even if you're younger, you don't want all your money in the S&P 500. I have a very diversified portfolio. I have the majority of it is in the S&P 500, but I also have some international stock. I also have some a little bit of just individual stocks that I buy just to have fun with. I think everybody should buy some stock to just enjoy. And you want to buy what you know, right? Like we go to Walmart a lot. We own some Walmart stock, right? I have an Apple phone. I have some Apple stock. So you want to own what you know. The transition, though, it becomes a little harder. Because at 36, 10 years from now, at 46, I'm still going to be thinking growth, 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 growth. But in reality, I've got to start working my way down the scale. And how I like to do it with clients is I think about the rule of 100. So take your age, okay, so let's use 50, and subtract it from 100. So 50% of your investments in this scenario using the rule of 100 should be at risk of substantial loss, okay? The other 50% should be like moderate to conservative and then balanced out in between that. And the reason for that is you still want to try to hit home runs, but you understand at 50, maybe you're going to retire at 55, maybe 60. As you start to land the plane into retirement, you don't want a market collapse to take your $1 million portfolio to $700,000. And so we want to have balance and diversifications. I really encourage you, if you're a DIYer, a do-it-yourselfer, this is a good time to talk to a financial advisor. Talk to me, talk to a local financial advisor, call your custodian if you have Fidelity, Vanguard, and really kind of do a deeper dive into your investments. I think 50 is a good age to do that. My average client is about 50 to 55. And so it's a great time to really start looking at your investments and saying, how am I positioned if the market goes up or down? Really, investing is simple. People always ask me, Drew, you watch CNBC or Fox Business and all these guys are throwing out these crazy terms. I say, listen, investing is simple. You just want to position yourself for optimal growth based on your risk tolerance. And what do I mean by that? I'm 36. My risk tolerance is 30 years. If the market drops 50%, I don't care with my investments because I'm adding money to them, I'm working, I'm trying to grow them. But my dad, at the time of this recording, is going to be 68. He does care if the market drops 50%. And so his investments need to be positioned as a 68-year-old with optimal growth, but based on his risk tolerance. So if I'm getting 20% in a year, the market does 20%, he should probably be getting 10 to 12. Right? Because if the market falls 20% and I fall 20% with the market, he only wants to fall 10 or 12%, right? I don't want him to have to move in with me because the market collapses, okay? And he's always welcome to visit, but I don't want him moving in, okay? So when you think about positioning your assets, just think about how are my assets positioned based on my age and optimal growth based on my risk tolerance. All right, let's talk about some of the pitfalls of early retirement. What are some of the things that can derail your early retirement? What do you need to think about if you want to retire early? That's what I want to talk about today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I want to go through 3 separate scenarios and show you how the pitfalls of early retirement affect each of these scenarios. Now, we're going to use the same amount of retirement savings. We're going to use differing amounts of Social Security because of claiming, and we're also going to look at 3 different ages: retiring at 55, retiring at 60, and retiring at 65. And I want to go through the pitfalls of each specific scenario. But first, let's talk about 3 reasons that you need to be aware of if you're going to retire early. What are some pitfalls if you're retiring early? Well, the first thing you need to think about is Social Security. When are you going to claim Social Security is a question I always like to ask. But what about how is Social Security affected when I stop working early? Because for Social Security, you have 35 earning years that they use to calculate your PIA, which is your primary insurance amount, which is basically the check that you'll get at full retirement age. If you were born after the year of 1960, your full retirement age is 67. If it's before that, if you were born pre-1960, it's 66 and however many months depending on your birth date. Now, you want to understand that your lifetime earnings are what's important to calculating your full retirement amount with Social Security. So over a 35-year period, if you retire early and you don't have 35 working years, then your Social Security will be less than what you're seeing on your statement. Because the statement you get from SSA.gov, Social Security Administration, is basically saying, hey, if you keep earning this income until your full retirement age, this is what your Social Security will be. But if you retire early and you don't make that amount of income, your PIA, your primary insurance amount for Social Security, will be less. So you got to understand that. That's the first pitfall you want to understand if you're going to retire early. The second pitfall you want to be aware of when it comes to retiring early is, where's my health insurance going to come from? What about my health insurance premium? Not just where is it going to come from, because it's probably going to come from the marketplace, which is Obamacare or the Affordable Health Care Act, but how much is that going to cost? Because you've really got to start calculating in, is health insurance going to be for me? Is it going to be for my spouse? Do I have dependents that I have to carry? Listen, the average cost of healthcare here in Florida for someone in their 50s on the open market is $500 a month. That is a middle grade plan, which is a silver plan on the marketplace, and that's for a single person. Now add in a spouse, that's $1,000. Now maybe add in one kid who's still in high school or college and say it's just $300 for them. Now you're looking at $1,300 a month. Have you planned for that in your early retirement? So if you retire at 55, you've got to have $1,300 extra per month for health insurance. And you got to do that for 10 years. And keep in mind, the inflation on healthcare is running about 9%. Not 3.27, which is the 108-year average for inflation. No, 9%. And if you have chronic health needs, chronic means you're not dying, then you've got to understand, where's the money going to come from for my medical care, my prescriptions? That's the second pitfall that you need to think about if you're going to retire early. Now, the third pitfall you need to be thinking about if you're going to retire early, and we're going to get into this on the board because we're going to look at the first pitfall, which is a lesser Social Security amount. We're going to look at the second pitfall, health insurance. All that's on the board. But the third pitfall is what I like to call the guardrail rule, or as some advisors call it, the risk capacity rule. Now, what is the guardrail rule? Well, for me, the guardrail rule is this. Does my portfolio have the ability to generate the kind of retirement income that I need to last for the duration of my retirement? And am I taking the appropriate amount of risk to earn that distribution for my retirement income? Or am I outside of the guardrails? Because maybe you're taking too much risk, and so you're putting your portfolio at risk of market loss, and you've got to live off that for 30 or 40 years. You're outside of the guardrail. Or maybe you're super conservative and you're not taking enough risk, and you're outside of the guardrail. You've got to make sure your portfolio is aligned in the guardrail rule. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second on the board. It's so important. You know, I hear about the 4% rule, and I've talked about the 25X rule on here, the replacement ratio. But you've really got to understand the guardrail rule when it comes to retirement income, because you want your retirement investing account portfolio to work inside of a guardrail, to make sure that it's invested for you where you're at today, to generate the retirement income that you need today, and so that that will be a longevity asset for you. So maybe you're 55, but you still want that asset to be there when you're 90, or you want some kind of bucket approach where you're paying down different buckets, but all that matters is that those buckets are there when you get to 90 or 95. The guardrail rule. It's so important to understand how my income is going to be distributed and how long it's going to last. You ready to get into some scenarios? Let's go. All right, let's look at 3 different scenarios, and I want to put these pitfalls that we've talked about into place. I want to talk about a lower Social Security amount because you retire early, which means the Social Security check you get at your full retirement age is less than you see on your SSA.gov statement or your Social Security statement that you get on a yearly basis, because you haven't, or you have put in your 35 working years. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at health insurance. If I retire at 55, I've got to carry health insurance for 10 years until I get to Medicare. If I retire at 60, I got to carry health insurance for 5 years until I get to Medicare. How's that going to affect my retirement income plan? And then finally, we're going to look at the guardrail rule, which is the longevity of our retirement investing accounts and how long will our retirement income last. Because listen, I don't want to get to mid-70 and run out of income. I don't want to get to mid-80 and run out of income. Now, if we're getting to 80, we're getting pretty close to where we want to be. But I would rather have a plan that gets us to 100. Even if you think you're going to die early, I want to get you to 100. So let's look at this. All right. So the first strategy is, can I retire at 55 with $800,000? And then we're going to look at, can I retire at 60 with $800,000? And can I retire at 65 with $800,000? And let's assume these are 3 different people, all within about a 10-year age range, all with about the same amount of expenses and health insurance costs, but we're looking at Joe, Sally, and Cindy. Okay? And Joe's 55, Sally's 60, and Cindy's 65. All right? Now, Joe's got $800,000, and he's got monthly expenses, his baseline expenses of $4,000 a month. Now, your baseline expenses are what you need to survive on the day-to-day, to go to Publix to buy your groceries. What do you need for the guy who cuts your yard? What do you need for just your baseline expenses, your water bill, your cable bill, whatever your bills are that you cannot live without, that's your baseline expenses. So for Joe, it's $4,000 a month. Now, Joe's 55 years old. So Joe has health insurance cost of $1,000. Now, we're going to do this until Joe is 65. So we've got 10 years of health insurance costs from 55 to 65. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Joe a break because I'm going to not put any inflation on his health insurance. Okay? Now, you might be saying, oh, Drew, Joe's single here. There's no way his health insurance is going to cost $1,000. He's 55 years old. Go to the marketplace, try to get a plan that's halfway decent, and you just tell me what the cost is. Keep in mind, you might be able to get a subsidy depending on how your income is distributed from your retirement assets, but for most of us working folk, we're saving money in pre-tax vehicles like 401ks and IRAs, and that's going to show up on our tax return, and that's going to hurt us when it comes to getting that subsidy for health insurance. So Joe's 55, he's got $800,000. Let's say it's in his 401k, and we're going to use the rule of 55, which means that he can pull money out of his 401k if he retired in the year that he turned 55 from his current job. It's all in his current 401k, so he can use it without paying a penalty. Now say that 10 times fast. So from age 55 to 67, we've got $4,000 in expenses, of which we're going to put 3% inflation on, okay? We've got $1,000 in health insurance, which we have no inflation on, and we're going to earn 6% a year on our $800,000. Now, from 55 to 67, that's 12 years of expenses. At 65, his health insurance falls off. He's going to go on Medicare, maybe a Medicare Advantage plan. He's going to have a free plan. At 67, he's got $175,236. So at 67, our expenses have grown to $6,136. Now, we've lost our health insurance cost, right? We lost that 2 years ago. So now we're kicking on our Social Security. Well, our Social Security is $2,400 a month. So $6,100 minus $2,400, that's $3,736. So he's basically out of money at 71 years old. Now, his Social Security is $2,400 a month. He's taking it his full retirement age, but he retired at 55. So he doesn't have a full 35 working years for Social Security. So when Social Security is calculating his full retirement check, if he retires at 55 and we've only worked for 28 years or 30 years, they're going to put zeros in the years that he didn't work. And they're going to do a division on that to come up with his PIA, his primary insurance amount. And so for Joe, his Social Security is $2,400. It could have been $2,800, $2,900, $3,000 if he kept working, but he wanted to retire early. So in this case, we're out at 71. So this is a scenario that we've really got to be cognizant of because we have health insurance costs and we have a lower Social Security because we stopped working. All right, let's go to Sally, right? Sally was the middle one. I think Cindy was the far one. So Sally's 60. Sally's got $800,000, all right? We're going to look at the same expenses, same health insurance. The only thing that's changing is age, okay? So Sally's worked till 60, and she saved $800,000 by the age of 60. Now, her expenses are the same as Joe. She's got $4,000 in baseline expenses. She's going to have a health insurance cost of $1,000 for 5 years, so 60 to 65. And then at 67, she's going to kick on Social Security. Now, we're going to earn 6% on this $800,000 in the market, and we're going to have 3% inflation. So from 60 to 67, her investments go to $635,465 because we're having to pull money off of our retirement investing accounts. Now, at 67, our expenses have grown to $5,067. We lost that health insurance 2 years ago, right? We went at 65, we went on Medicare. We got a Part C plan, which is a Medicare Advantage plan, which covers our doctors, our hospitals, our prescriptions, all in one little package. Some plans are free. Some plans cost, $20 a month, $100 a month, whatever. Depends on your state and where you're at. If you need help with that, contact us in the description. $5,000 is our expenses. We're kicking on Social Security. It's $2,600 per month. Now, she worked 5 extra years than Joe. So she's got a bump of $200 a month or $2,400 a year in her Social Security. $2,467 is what she has to pull off of her investments at 67 to survive. Again, 6% is our rate of return, 3% inflation. We're out at 88 years old. Now, what we're not including in this scenario or in Joe's scenario is a home, okay? So we might have a home that we could sell, do a reverse mortgage. This is a pretty good plan, and I feel pretty good about this. So retiring at 60 with $800,000. There might be other variables that we're not counting in here. Maybe there's a rental property with some rental income. Maybe there's a pension. I don't know. Again, I just want to show you a simple SIMPLE scenario for you to get a good idea for yourself. Now let's move to Joe, Cindy, Sally? No, Sally, Cindy. Let's move to Cindy, okay? So Cindy's 65 and she's worked until she's 65 and she's going to retire at 65 with $800,000. Now, most of you would probably say, yeah, Drew, she can retire at 65 with $800,000. I know, but I just want to show you the difference. So we have $4,000 in expenses, okay? Now, she doesn't have a healthcare cost because Joe, Sally, Cindy, because Cindy had a chronic health condition and she was getting really good health care at work. So she decided to continue to work because her health care was really important to her and she needed her company's plan to help pay for her health care cost. So she retires at 65, okay? No health insurance costs anymore because she's going on Medicare. We're going on Part C again, which is an Advantage plan. Now, she could choose a supplement at that point if she wanted to. This is not a Medicare video, but she goes on Part C, so we eliminate that cost. So from 65 to 67, earning 6% a year on her $800,000 with 3% inflation on her expenses, her money grows to $821,000. So we net about $21,000 in gains. Now, from 67 to 100, our expenses have grown to $4,320. Again, there's going to be 3% inflation on that from 67 all the way to 100. Our Social Security is kicking on at $2,800 a year. Remember, she's worked her full 35 years. So when Social Security goes to calculate her PIA, her primary insurance amount, they're taking a full 35 working years into account, and they're dividing that by 35 to get an indexed formula, which finally gets your PIA. It's like Russell Crowe, A Beautiful Mind on a blackboard a lot of times. Okay, so $4,320 is her expenses, $2,800 her Social Security, so she needs $1,500 a month, right? Now this is going to be inflated from 67 on. We're using the Your Financial EKG software when we're doing this, and at 100, she has $1.4 million. It's a pretty good scenario for her. So I really want you to take into account Joe at 55, we've got health insurance costs and we have lower Social Security because we retired early, okay? Sally retired at 60, we still have that health insurance. Again, we have a lower Social Security amount. And then Cindy worked all the way to 65, so she got a full Social Security amount and she didn't have that health care cost. So you've got to understand what are some of the pitfalls if I decide to retire early. And hey, if you want to go through a financial EKG with me, look in the description below, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. Can I retire at 55? I want to retire early. How do I do it? Well, the first way you do it is through the rule of 55. Now, I've talked extensively about the rule of 55 on this channel. I have used the rule of 55 for my clients. I love the rule of 55. But there's some caveats to it, and you have to understand it completely. So the rule of 55 says if you have a current 401k at your job and you are 55 years or older, you can actually use your current 401k for retirement income without a penalty. So if you turn 55 in March of this year and you say, you know what, I want to retire, you can actually use that current 401k for retirement income. You can use it to live off of under the age of 59 and a half, and you won't pay a 10% penalty. Now, you will pay taxes, but you will not pay a penalty. But here's the thing most people don't think about. This does not include your old 401ks. This does not include your IRAs that are at your brokerage account. It only includes your current 401k. Well, what if you are like most Americans and you've switched jobs 6 or 7 times throughout your career and you've got 4 old 401ks? Well, before you decide to retire or quit or be terminated, do a little trick. Let's say this is your current 401k. This is your current 401k. All right? And this is a basket of your old 401ks or IRAs. And you go, you know what? I want to retire at 55. But if you touch this money, this old 401ks and IRAs, and you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're going to pay a 10% penalty along with your taxes. And if you have your current 401k, but your income coming out of this won't make it to 59 and a half, meaning there's not enough money in here to sustain you so you can start using this money over the age of 59 and a half, what are you going to do? You almost feel stuck. You're like, well, I guess I can just take it out of here and get the 10% penalty. No, here's the tip. Take this money and reverse rollover into your current 401k. Now, you have to talk to your plan administrator to make sure they allow you to do that. A lot of 401ks I work with, they do allow you to do a reverse rollover. And now you've got enough money in your current 401k. Now, you got to do this before you quit or get terminated or retire. But now you've got enough money in your current 401k to hopefully bridge the gap to Social Security and the rest of your retirement. Again, it's why you want to have a retirement income plan. You want to understand your strategies. Maybe you don't have to do this. Maybe the current 401k, if you've done your homework, if you have a financial EKG, will allow you to get to 60, and then you can start using this money over here for retirement income. But you don't know that unless you have a retirement income plan. All right, so what's the other option? So you're under the age of 59 and a half. You are 55 years old, or you're 52, you're asking, can I retire at 55? What's the other option? Well, let's leave this money up here. We've got our current 401k, and we've got old 401ks and IRAs. And let's just assume for practical purposes that the current 401k will not allow you to do a reverse rollover. What are you going to do? You want to retire at 55? All your money's in 401ks and IRAs. What do? Well, you can do what they call a 72T. Now, a 72T is a special tax provision in the IRS code that allows you to set up substantially equal periodic payments from your IRA or from multiple IRAs and use that money for retirement income without the 10% penalty. Now, here's the stipulation, because the IRS giveth and the IRS taketh away. The stipulation is you have to do it for 5 years or 59 and a half, whichever is longer. So if you're doing retirement planning at 50 and you're saying, I'm going to retire at 50 and I'm going to use a 72T, you've got to do a 72T for 10 years. All right? Now, if your age is 55, right, and you want to do a 72T, you only have to do it 5 years. 5 years or age 59 and a half, whichever is longer, right? So we look at our 72T and we ask ourselves, does it make sense to do this? Now, 72Ts can be updated on an annual basis. There's 3 different schedules that the IRS allows you to do when it comes to a 72T. I'm not going to get into those 3 different schedules, but they can be updated on an annual basis based on market fluctuations. It's a 12/31 value of your account in the previous year. There's a lot that goes into a 72T. Make sure sure you talk to your CPA, your tax accountant, or call me. Again, we want to have a retirement income plan to understand how do we need to designate our IRA assets, because if we're going to use a 72T to do a can I retire at 55, we want to make sure it's set up appropriately perfect, right? We want to make sure it's set up right, because here's the reason. With a 72T, the IRS says this: we're not going to penalize you if you take substantially equal periodic payments out of your IRA for the allotted time frame. But, if you screw it up, we're going to penalize you 10%. Not just in the year that you screwed it up, but for every year that you took a 72T payment. So if you've been doing a 72T for 7 years and you screw it up in the eighth year, the IRS says, give us that 10% penalty for 8 years right now. So it's very important, if you're doing a 72T, to do it right. All right, let's look at a retirement strategy for a 50-year-old with $500,000 saved for retirement. This is Jack Foster. This is his scenario. So Jack is 50 years old and 5 months. He's got a birthday in August 15th. He'll be 51. His current salary is about $110,000 per year. Now, he is a plumber. He's self-employed. So his income does fluctuate up and down depending on how many toilets he unclogs. And so we've averaged it out over the last 5 years. It's about $110,000 for the last 5 years. I hope it's more than that, but we're just going to look at it at $110,000. And we're going to show a projected annual salary increase of 1%. So we're going to show more people clogging up more toilets and needing Jack for work, all right? Now, we're going to look at a projected retirement date of January of 2033. So he'll be 60 years and 5 months at that point. So we're looking at a 60-year-old, 10 years from now, retirement date, okay? So we've got 10 years to build up our retirement assets, our retirement savings, our retirement income portfolio to make sure that we've got enough money for retirement income and to last throughout our retirement. The first thing that we're going to look at with Jack, okay, Social Security. This is a big thing. So we're looking at Jack taking it at 67. That would be his full retirement age. He was born after 1960. So his full retirement age is 67 years old. $2,800 is his gross monthly benefit at 67. Now, he's self-employed, and so his Social Security benefit is less for someone who's made $100,000 a year for a lot of his career. But the reason for that is he's got a lot of business expenses that go on top of that. So $2,800 is what he's going to get for Social Security at 67. We need to look at this. Again, Jack's single. Now, he's divorced, okay? He has 2 children. And so as a single guy, he needs to look at Social Security like an income payment, like an annuity income payment. We need to try to maximize his Social Security because it's on me, myself, and I, right? There's no other assets that are going to come in to Jack's life. There's no other plan that's going to be added in as an influx of retirement savings. And so for him, as a single guy, we want to try to maximize his Social Security because it's guaranteed, backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, and has a COLA increase on it for the rest of his life. So $2,800 is what it would be at 67. Now let me show you this real quick because I think this is really imperative that you understand exactly what Social Security looks like. So let's think about Jack for a minute. So we've got Jack and he's 50, okay? Now, if he takes Social Security at 62, he's going to get 70% of his full retirement benefit. So he'd only get 70% of his full retirement benefit. Remember, his full retirement benefit is $2,800. So at 62, he's only going to get $1,960. Now, at 67, he would get 100%, which is the $2,800, okay? And then at 70, we're able to add in another 840, I'm sorry, he's get 124% of his full retirement benefit at 70. So now we're able to add in basically another 30%, which would be $3,472. So at 70, he's going to get 124% of his full retirement benefit. So as a single guy, we look at this and I say, gosh, Jack, if we could get $3,400 per month for the rest of your life at 70, 20 years from now, that would be really good, because we know that this is going to get a COLA increase between 50 and 70. And we know that once you turn this on at 70, it's going to get a COLA increase for the next 15 and 20 years. That's a lot of money that you're leaving on the table if you take it too soon. But the question becomes, can our assets support taking Social Security here? Because if we retire at 60 and our retirement assets can't support that, we might have to take Social Security here to give our retirement assets a break. We got to plug the gap so that our retirement income will come from somewhere and be able to last forever. So that's what we're going to look at. What's going to make the most sense for Jack? Okay, so let's go back to the plan. Now, we go to assets. So Jack has just a few assets. He's got money in the bank, $50,000. Okay, he's got a good hedge in the bank. At TD Ameritrade, we manage money for Jack at TD Ameritrade. He has a SEP IRA. In his SEP, he has $375,000, of which he's putting about $1,500 a month into his SEP IRA. That's 25% of his salary, okay? So with a SEP IRA, you can put in 25%, up to 25% of your salary, or like $67,000, and that changes every year, okay? So he's putting in 25% of his salary, $1,500. He also has a TD Ameritrade Freedom Fund, which is a non-qualified brokerage account of $75,000, where he's putting in $250 a month. So all total, he's putting about $1,750 per month into the market, okay? So we want to see, projected out, how much will you have at retirement putting in $1,750 and getting a rate of return from the overall market. Now, Jack's primary residence is $375,000 and it is paid off. He doesn't have any debt. So the reason he has less saved for retirement now, because he paid a lot onto his house to get that paid off. So we have a $375,000 home that's paid off, but that can be used for an asset in the future. I did not mention Jack lives in Montana. And so, you know, if he wants to move to Florida, he could, Texas, he could, but he's in a lower cost area of Montana. And so his house, even though it's paid off, is not necessarily an asset where he could sell it and move to another low cost area of the country. So this is going to be, it needs to be used as an influx into his retirement plan in the way of maybe a reverse mortgage would be if need be. Okay, so from a rate of return standpoint, we're going to earn 6% before retirement, and we're going to earn 4% after retirement. All we're trying to do is to just kind of downshift his risk as we go, right? So right now at 50, we're still trying to earn as much as we possibly can. It's all about capital appreciation. But the closer we get to age 60, it becomes more about capital preservation, because eventually it's going to become distribution, right? We're going to distribute his assets. House is going to earn a 1% rate of return. Any cash flows or RMDs are at 6 and 4. Okay, so his overall rate of return is 5.5% until he gets to retirement. So at 60, his rate of return is going to be 4% from 60 to 100. So for all of you who comment and say the market's not going to make 6% for the next decade, here's 4% for you. Okay, we're going to downshift to 4. Now, current risk classification, 85, whoa, not 85%, go back up here. This is at risk. Perfect, there we go. Current risk classification, 90% of his money is at risk, which means it's in the market, okay? And 10% is in the bank. Taxes, this is bigger. 75% of his money is qualified, meaning there will be taxes that need to be paid on this. So the question becomes, on this money, do we want to do some Roth conversions? What's that look like? How can we get more money into the Freedom Fund or into a Roth IRA so there's less taxes in the future? What we want to look at from a tax standpoint is he's putting this $1,500 in for taxes every year. Now he's self-employed, so he's putting money away as a deduction
for his business taxes as well. He's trying to get his, he's basically trying to get his tax bill as low as possible. It's just him. He's a solo guy, solo entrepreneur. So there's not any employees. There's no solo 401ks or 401ks. So he has a SEP. He's trying to bring his income down as much as possible. The deduction does that. So we need to look at what his taxes are going to be. And if we adjust this distribution, can we put more money into the brokerage account, eliminate the SEP contribution so that there's less taxable income in the future, or is it better to continue to do the SEP deposit to bring the taxes down now? Okay, so that's something we really need to get a handle on. Now, from an expense standpoint, his expenses are $3,500 a month. Very low expenses. Again, he has no debt. He's a single guy. The kids are grown. He lives in Montana. Okay, $3,500. Cash flows. Jack likes to fish. So his annual fishing trip costs about $3,000. He stays local in the Midwest area. So he wants to do a fishing trip every year of about $3,000. Okay, so from 2023 to 2048 with an increase on this. So we need to go in here. I don't know if I put an inflation increase. I didn't. Let's put a 2.5% inflation increase on this. So his fishing trip's going to get a 2.5% increase every year. $3,000, 2.5%, because he likes to fish. So we wanted to add that in. So here's taxes. So let's look at this. So let's go to 2024. So in the year 2024, his tax rate is basically 14%. That's his projected federal tax rate. So you can see it over here. Here's his wages. So that's his gross income. There's his qualified contributions. There's the $18,000 that we're putting into the SEP IRA. Here's his 1099 interest from the bank. And then here's any kind of taxable withdrawals. That's that he took out that money for the fishing trip. Okay, so his gross income, $96,669. There's our deduction, single person deduction, $13,850. Remember, if he's married, it's $27,000, but he's single, so it's $13,850. So our taxable income is $82,819. All right, which puts him in the 22% bracket, but after all the deductions and credits, he's in the 14% bracket. Now, take a look at this. Remember that number, 14%. Let's go back to assets real quick. Remember, he's putting $1,500 into his SEP and $250 into his Freedom Fund. What if we flip that? What if we took $1,500 and put that into the Freedom Fund, right, and $250 into the SEP? So we're at 14%. Let's go back to taxes. Look what it does. It bumps us up 1%. So from 13.94 to 15.06. Remember, 97,819. We were at 82. Now we're at 97,819. Remember, we $18,000 in qualified contributions. Now we only have 3. So it's something I can go back to Jack on and say, hey, Jack, if we adjust your contribution from the SEP to the brokerage account, your taxes will go up 1% now, okay? But in the future, you'll have less taxes because there'll be less money in the SEP. Do you want to do that? Okay, so that's a conversation we would have to have. Now let's go back and change it. Perfect. All right. So let's go to pre-retirement. This is where we're going to see, hey, how long is this going to last? So at 50, here's our gross monthly salary. There's our monthly contributions. You can see that $1,500 into the SEP, $250 into the Freedom Fund, $3,000. That's the fishing trip. We're going fishing. There's our net monthly income, $5,312. Net means taxes have come out of this. Net monthly expenses. So we have a positive cash flow of $1,700. Now, anytime you see green on the screen, what I'm going to do with the software is I'm going to take that positive green and we're going to put that into a brokerage account for Jack. So we're going to continue to build up that Freedom Fund. We want to continue to put money in there. Now, if he didn't have enough in his emergency fund, if he didn't have enough in maybe a savings account, we could build up those funds as well and then move it to the brokerage account. But because he has $50,000 in his savings account, which I feel is really good for where he's at, we can repurpose that money into a brokerage account. So when you look at this, we're at $500,000 right now at 50. At 60, he'd have $1.1 million in retirement savings. So let's go to retirement and let's look at this. And you can probably already see it up here a little bit. Basically, in the year 2055, we're out at 83. okay? He needs, a rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall is 6.54%. Now remember, at retirement, we're running this at 4. So we're about 2.5% off what he needs to make this money go to 100. But as a single guy, mortality rates at about 84, 85 for males, maybe we just look at pushing this another 10 years, okay? So let's look at this. So we're at 60, here's our distributions. Here's 67 Social Security, the 2,800, which we talked about on the board. And here we are out of money at 83. So this is what I'll talk to Jack about. I'll say, hey Jack, at about 75, 76, your house is worth $486,000. You could do a reverse mortgage at this point if you didn't want to leave the house to the kids. If you were not concerned about legacy with the house, you could do a reverse mortgage. That would put an influx into the plan. Depending on where the real estate market is, you could sell the house and move into a smaller condo or something. Those two things, when I talked to Jack, were not necessarily, it did not get him excited, right? Didn't set his wood on fire. So I said, okay, well, we need to go back to the drawing board. Let's go back to Social Security first. Let's look at taking Social Security at 62. So let's get 70% of your full retirement benefit. I know that's heresy saying that, but let's look at it. What if we took it at 62 with some COLA increases? Here we go, 1960. It's a great year for music. So 1960, he's taking it at 62. Now remember, look at this. If he takes it at 63, 64, 65, 66, he's still going to get an increase. 67 is the full retirement age. In 70s where we're getting 124%. But let's just look at 62 real quick and see what happens. Go back to retirement. Look, we actually gained a year by taking it early. Why is that, Drew? Easy. We took Social Security early, right? So think about it from a bucket standpoint. We have this bucket of money, which is his Social Security. We have this bucket of money, which is his retirement assets. We're using this bucket for income. Well, he's 60. He needs a little bit more income than what the portfolio percentage can deliver. And so the retirement asset is slowly draining. So what we can do is we can start this Social Security bucket and stop the retirement asset bucket. And so now the drain is slower because we're using the 2. It gives him an extra year. It's not a permanent fix, but it is a move in the right direction. So I say, okay, Jack, let's go back to Social Security. We looked at taking it 62, 84. I still don't feel that great about that. Let's see what we can do to get you into the 90s. So let's take Social Security at 67. I said, hey, Jack, why do you want to retire at 60? He says, well, I've been plumbing my entire life. I feel like at that point it would be 40 years. It just feels right. And I said, what if you retired at 60 and then could you work part-time in your job? Could you just work for your current clientele when they clogged up their toilet or their septic tank needed drained? Is that something you can do kind of on a part-time basis? And he said, well, yeah, I could do that part-time. I said, okay, let's look at that. Let's look at you working part-time from 60 to 70, just 10 years, and you only have to unclog toilets when you want to, okay? If you don't want to unclog a toilet, you don't want to mess around with some poop, don't do it, okay? So let's go to cash flows real quick, and let's put in some part-time work. So let's say part-time work. Let's start this when he's 60. So we're going to start this, let's say March of 2033, and we'll do this until 2043. And let's say you make 20, what do you say? You're at 110 now, part-time work. You don't want to work that hard. Let's say you make $30,000 a year. Okay, so 30,000, divide that by 12, that's $2,500 a month. Okay, $2,500 a month. From 3 of 33 to 43, we'll increase that by just 1% a year. And that's going to come from your work, and it's going to go to pay expenses. Okay, so part-time work, unclogging toilets, let's do it. So that's an inflow, $2,500, we're going to start it there. So let's look at this now. So now, you see this? Here's our part-time work coming in. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to get that for 10 years. Okay, $2,500 for 10 years, giving a little bit of a Social Security, or giving it a little of a cost of living increase right there. And now we're out of money at 90. I feel a lot better about that. I feel pretty good about getting us to 90, and look at our rate of return. It's down to 5.72, which means now we have less that we have to earn in the market. And I say, hey Jack, how do you feel about that? I feel pretty good. I say, okay, let's look at one more thing. Just for me, what if you worked for 2 more years? You didn't retire at 60, you retired at 62. So let's retire you at 62. Okay, Jack, just hang with me. I'm not telling you to work any longer. Just hang with me, okay? We're gonna work for 2 more years. That means our part-time work is not gonna start until 2035. We're still gonna do it to 70, so I'm not gonna have you working part-time for 10 years, 62 to 70, just 62 to 70, okay? But we're gonna work for another 2 years, which means we're gonna get another 2 years of this coming in, okay? What does that do? 94. Get you an extra 4 years. What do you think about that, Jack? And that's the conversation we have as we're doing the EKG, as we're going through the financial plan, because it's not necessarily a set it and forget it, Pillsbury dough, sprinkle pixie dust, it's gonna work. This is work that we do together. And if you want a financial EKG, go to the description of this video, get in touch with me. Let's put one together for you to get you to retirement, to get you through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. What if I told you that the most popular investment for saving in your 401k and your IRA for retirement is the worst, the absolute worst investment for retirement savings? This investment has been around since 1994 and has gained popularity in 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, and in brokerage accounts for saving for retirement. It's called the set it and forget it way to save for retirement, but it is the absolute worst way that you could be saving for retirement. You want to know what that investment vehicle is? It's a target date fund. Yes, I said it. Target date funds are the worst investments for you to save for retirement. Barron's Magazine actually calls it set it and regret it. Not set it and forget it, set it and regret it. Now, what is a target date fund? Maybe you don't even know that you're invested in the worst investment for a 401k or an IRA for your retirement savings. What is a target date fund? Well, on your 401k list of mutual funds, there are many different styles of mutual funds, whether that's equity, meaning stock, whether that's fixed income, meaning bond, whether that's international exposure, meaning equity, maybe bond as well. And within that list of mutual funds, there are some mutual funds that have numbers after the 5 alphabet ticker symbol. So it might be ABCDX 2040. That's a target date fund. And basically, target date funds are set up to adjust their risk and their investments based on your retirement year. So if you've got 30 or 40 years until retirement, your target date fund may say 2040 or 2050. If you're going to retire very soon, your target date may have a 5-year, a 2-year, or the same year that you are in right now. So in the year 2022, if you're going to retire in 5 years, your target date fund may say 2027. And the risk and the investments inside of that target date fund are going to adjust, meaning become more conservative based on when you are going to retire. It sounds good, but it's the worst investment that you can put into your 401k. Can I retire at 60 with $800,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today. We have a couple, they're 55 years old, and what we're going to look at is spending more money now. Spend your money now. Enjoy your money now. Stop saving for retirement as long as you're doing the right things, and have a good retirement plan, a financial EKG that's going to get you to retirement, through retirement, protect your ability to stay in retirement. You ready to look at this? Let's go into the software right now. All right, here's what we got. We got Jimmy and Sharon. It's Jimmy and Sharon Frugal. Thank you for the name recommendation off of YouTube. Obviously, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. Jimmy is a welder and he's self-employed. Sharon works part-time at the church. Now, Jimmy's income is $80,000 a year. Sharon's income is $30,000 a year, and they're both 55 years old. And we're looking at retiring around 60 to 61 years old. We're going to look at 61 at this point, but we're looking right around 60 or 61 years old. Now, here's what I want you to notice first. Jimmy's self-employed. Sharon works on staff at a church. So Jimmy, when we look at his taxes right offhand, his Social Security and Medicare is self-employed, right? So he has a higher tax that's due for Social Security and Medicare. Now, if we go over to Sharon, right? We go to Sharon, she's salaried. She has a lower tax on her Social Security and Medicare. That's just a little tidbit of something that needs to be factored into your retirement plan. That's why it's so important, the small details you need to be thinking about. I'm not talking about the free software that you can run online. I'm talking about having a detailed financial plan. If you want one from me, contact me below. The information is there. Let's put together a financial EKG, a comprehensive retirement plan to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay there. Now, Social Security, we're looking at both Jimmy and Sharon taking Social Security at 62. Now, Jimmy's his primary benefit is $2,035. Sharon's going to get a spousal benefit because her benefit record, she just started working again. She raised the kids, she homeschooled the kids, a lot like my wife does. We homeschool our 3 children. God bless her, because that is an incredible job. It's a tougher job than anything that I will ever do in my industry, okay? Now, she's going to take a spousal benefit of $651, okay? So her earnings record, or her Social Security, is actually less than half of what Jimmy's is, but because Jimmy's going to claim early and she's going to claim early, we're actually only going to get 32% of a spousal benefit. Now, Jimmy's going to take Social Security at 62, which means he's going to get 70% of his full retirement benefit. If we waited till 67, he would get 100% of his full retirement benefit. If he waited till 70, he would get 124% of his full retirement benefit. But because we're going to take it early, he's going to get a reduced benefit of 70%, which is also going to give Sharon, his spouse, a reduced benefit as a spousal benefit. Okay? Following along? Perfect. Now, there aren't any pensions, right? Jimmy's self-employed and Sharon works at the church, so no pensions. From an asset standpoint, here's what we've got. Jimmy's got an IRA with $450,000 in it. He's doing the max contribution, $625 per month. Sharon has a Roth IRA, which they've been contributing to as a spousal Roth IRA, but now she's working, so she's contributing the max to her Roth IRA. And they also have a joint account, a joint brokerage account, which I call a freedom fund, which they're putting $250 a month into. So, essentially, let me pull out my old calculator and let's look at how much we're saving. $625, and $250. They're saving $1,500 per month for retirement. $1,500 times 12 is $18,000. Let's go back to their income. We've got $80,000 plus $30,000. So what is that? 110, 90, 100, 110. Okay, $18,000 divided into 110 is what? 16.3. So they're saving 15 to 20% of their gross annual income. They're saving 16.3%. So they're doing exactly what we want them to do in the sense of saving for retirement. What I want to convince them to do, they're conservative. They're hard-working, conservative Americans. And I'm not talking politically conservative. I'm talking about fiscally conservative. They've worked hard. They're saving their money. They want to see this money last throughout their retirement and for their children. I want to convince them to spend a little bit more now to enjoy themselves. Because I know that with Jimmy's job, hard working job, that his knees, his back, his neck, his shoulders, his elbows, his feet are going to be bothering him later in life because he is working hard. And so we need to look at this and say, how can we spend more money now to enjoy and have a solid retirement plan? All right, so they have a home. It's worth $450,000 and they don't have any debt on their home. All right. Now, from a rate of return standpoint, we're looking at about 4.74% rate of return. So we have $575,000 in current spendable assets. We're putting $1,500 a month into contributions. We've got a $450,000 house, which means we have a total portfolio value of $1,025,000. Okay? Now, let's go to the next page. Let's look at expenses. Here's where we're going to start putting in some spending. So, we have baseline expenses of $3,000 with inflation of 3.27%. So baseline expenses are utilities, taxes, food, memberships, anything that you're going to continue to spend money on. And we're looking at inflation of 3.27%. That's the 109-year average, okay? Now, it could be higher for the next couple years. It could be lower. I just want to look at this on a national scale. An average on the nation, right? Because your inflation in Los Angeles is different from Waco, Texas, which is different from Bangor, Maine, which is different from Tampa, Florida. But when we're looking at this, what we're trying to get for each individual client is an individualized inflation rate, because it's so important that your inflation rate is not the same as my inflation rate, right? I'm buying diapers. Are you buying diapers? I hope not. Maybe. It depends. You might be. But what I want to look at is, what's your individualized saving rate? Now, let me show you what I mean by that. Let's throw in an expense here. Let's say they had a loan for whatever, and that loan was $500 a month. $500 a month, okay? So they're at $3,833. Now it's $4,333. You see that? We added the $500. Now the inflation rate's 3.27%. But let's say that the loan doesn't have inflation on it, right? So let's take that to zero. Now, you see how the average inflation rate went down to 2.89? That's because we were able to have an individualized inflation rate for them. We don't want to have 3.27% on a loan. If it doesn't have inflation, we don't need to calculate in. Think about the cash flow. Think about 3% in your 80s and 90s, what that really comes to. We need to have an individualized inflation rate. Again, that's why it's so important to have a comprehensive financial plan. We call it a financial EKG. And in our financial EKG, we look at the 316 principle, right? The 316 principle says this. We have three forms of income that we want in retirement. We want a Social Security, we want some sort of guaranteed income, and we might need a source of variable income. Social Security, guaranteed, and variable. That's the three. We want one comprehensive financial plan covering the 6 areas of your retirement, the major areas of your retirement. Let's look at this. Income, 1. Assets, 2. Expenses, 3. Cash flow and taxes, 4. What we're doing pre-retirement, 5. And our retirement, 6. 316 principle. Reminds me of a really good verse, John 3:16, right? So we look at this and we can take this loan out now because they actually don't have the loan. And so for them, we've got baseline expenses of $3,000 with 3.27% average inflation. Now, here's where I want to talk to you about spending a little bit more money. Now, we're going to look at fun until 60. We're going to look at fun from 60 to 70, or 61 to 70, I should correct that. And then fun from 71 to 80. And you can see how there's different values of this fund and how we've broken this down. So fun until 60, Jimmy and Sharon are going to spend $833 a month on fun. Now, I'm breaking this down on a monthly basis, but we're looking at it as a lump sum for a year, right? So $833, multiply that by 12, that's basically about $10,000 a year they're going to spend. I'm asking them to spend on fun while they're young, okay? We're going to put inflation on that because a vacation to Florida is more expensive today than it was 2, 3, 4 years ago, right? Try to go to Clearwater Beach today. As a local, I don't want to go to the beach. It's so expensive. Now, fun, 61 to 70, we're going to look at $1,000 a month. Okay, that's $12,000 a year with inflation. So we're going to continue this on. Now, the reason I went from $833 to $1,000 from ages 55 to 60, 61 to 70 is because I needed this number, this $1,000 number, to be inflated for what that would be worth in 5 years, right? So this 833 is today's dollar. This 1,000 is basically 833 a month 5 years from now, okay? That's how much your money erodes. That's a lot of money. And then fund from 71 to 80, we're backing it down to $810 a month with inflation. Okay, and we're going to end it at 80. We're going to end the fund at 80. Doesn't mean you're not going to have fun. We're just trying to look at this plan. We want to spend more money now. Okay, are you guys tracking with me? Leave it in the comments if you're not. If you have questions, concerns, leave it in the comments. Let's talk about it. So we go to cash flows. There's no cash flows in this situation. Taxes, we're doing pretty good. We go to 2024. We're in Massachusetts. Projected federal tax rate, 8.36%. So we're in a pretty low projected federal tax rate. He is self-employed, so we have the ability to have some more write-offs. We're looking at deductions, we're looking at a standard deduction of $27,700. Now, we have itemized deductions for Jimmy and Sharon because of him working, so his taxes are a little different. His business is an LLC. So again, there's a little bit of a different tax situation going on for them because he's self-employed, but looking at it on the surface, without some of the benefits of being self-employed, they're in a very, very, very low tax bracket. So let's look at pre-retirement. This is what's important. I want to look at this right here, this net monthly cash flow, because that's going to tell me, can they spend a little extra money now? So we're 55. Here's our salary, welder, right, and part-time. Here's our monthly contributions to the IRA, to the Roth, to the brokerage account. So we've got a net monthly income. There's our salary, there's our IRA, there's the Roth, there's the brokerage, there's taxes withheld. So our net total is $5,542. Here's our expenses, $3,885. There's our net monthly cash flow. See, we're in the green? We're in the green with fun being in there. So for them, I'm able to say, hey, Jimmy and Sharon, you see this green? You might spend it because like your HVAC might go out, you might need a new roof, you might need a new car, something. But based on where you're at today, you are in the green. And you can see their retirement assets are growing to over $859,000 at 60. Okay? So we're spending more money now. They could easily save this, right? We could take some of this and start chucking it into our investments. But does that make the most sense mentally? Well, let's look at it again. We go to pre-retirement. We've got $859,000 at 60. Are we saving enough? So the question becomes, can I retire at 60 or 61 with $860,000 saved for retirement? We go to retirement now. Here, let's look at this. Here's our Social Security's kicking on, right? Here's our retirement savings. Here's our net monthly expenses. Now here's what I want you to see. See how the net monthly expenses are growing? Then at 80, it slows down a little bit. And look at this. At 100, they've got $75,420 left in spendable assets. This is their house. It's worth $709,000. So they could have easily sold that sometime there and put that back into the plan, or downsize, or move to Florida. I don't know if they'd want to move to Florida. Maybe move to Tennessee or the Carolinas or something if they wanted to, or out west, Colorado. I don't know, wherever you want to go. But I want you to see how there is plenty of money left. Let's go back to like 89 and 90. Look at this. You have $542,000. And they were spending that extra money, right? They were enjoying themselves. So that's what I want you to see. That I want you to save for retirement. Look, here they are. They're saving for retirement. They're doing the right things. They're working hard. They've got money in the bank. They've got money in their IRA, their Roth IRA, brokerage account. They're saving money. But they're also enjoying some money now, right? So they can enjoy their savings, they can enjoy their income, while they're healthy. Now, for them, we're not pulling this out of their IRA or their Roth IRA and causing any kind of taxable penalties. We're pulling this from monthly spendable income. Okay, this is money that's been taxed and we're using it. So instead of it going into the bank, we're going to spend some of this. Now, once they get to 61 and 70, I'll show you. Once we get into retirement, now we have a withdrawal order. You see this? We have withdrawal. We're going to withdraw the IRA, the Roth IRA, and the non-qualified money. So we're going to pull money out of our investments once we get into retirement. It's cash flow until then. So you've got to be real careful if you're doing this. If you're under the age of 59 and a half, you're not pulling money out of your IRA, your Roth IRA, your 401k, unless you're using the rule of 55 or a 72T or something. You don't want to do it and cause yourself a tax penalty. Make sure you have a comprehensive financial plan when you do this. So for them, we're trying to spend more money now so that we can enjoy it. We can enjoy it. Look at this. At 70 years old, they got $843,000. At 80, we got $744,000. And you go, what about long-term care? I'm pretty sure $744,000 and $580,000 house. What is that? What are those two figures together? I can't do that in my head. 744 and 580. That's $1.3 million in total assets. I'm pretty sure they got long-term care covered at that point. And those are conversations that we're going to have down the road about what we need to do to protect against that. But I also want them to enjoy themselves, okay? So I hope this video has helped. Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. And I retire at 60 with $500,000 saved for retirement. So we're looking right here. We're going to retire at 60 with $512,000 saved for retirement. Now remember, her expenses are $3,500 per month. Now these are going to get a 3% inflation rate. So every month, we're going to look at inflation on this $3,500 in expenses. Okay? Now, she does have Social Security. Now it's going to start at 67, but from age 60 to 67, all of her income is going to come from her $512,000 that she saved for retirement. Now, from an assumption standpoint, we're going to assume a 6% rate of return on her money. So the $500,000 that is in her 401k is going to get a 6% rate of return. Now, the reason I'm using 6% is because the market over the last 50 years has averaged about 10%. If you factor in inflation, it's averaged about 8%. We're going to manage these assets more conservatively than what the market has returned. So we're going to assume 2% behind the 8% average for a 6% rate of return. Now, keep in mind, don't look at this on a year-by-year basis because there are some years, like 2022, where the market is negative. And then there's years like 2021 where the market is positive. We're looking at it over a long time frame, the averages over that time frame. So that 6% rate of return is an average we're looking at for the next 30, 35, 40 years of her retirement. The same with inflation. We're looking at it not on a year-by-year basis. There might be higher years inside of this inflation, but we're looking at it over the long term. Now, we've got $512,000 saved for retirement. We're going to take out $3,500 a month with inflation. So at 67, our 512 actually falls to $240,319. So we're less about $250,000 from where we started, which is not good over a 7-year period. Now, $240,319 is what we've got at 67. Our expenses because of inflation have gone to $4,399. So that's our new expenses. Our Social Security is going to start kicking in now. So we've got $4,399 in expenses. Our Social Security is $3,000. So there's our Social Security, which means we need what? $1,399 coming out of this $240,000. So we need $1,400 a month out of this $240,000 in order to live. That's going to get a 3% inflation rate. So we're going to have a 3% inflation rate on this money, and we're still going to have a 6% rate of return. So now we look at this and say, okay, how long is this going to last? And unfortunately, we are out of money. We're at zero at 77 years old. So we look at this and say, can I retire at 60 with $500,000 saved for retirement with $3,500 in expenses, waiting to 67 to collect Social Security? And the answer is, unfortunately, no, you can't. So there's a few factors that we have to look at. The first factor is we need to increase this $512,000. How do we do that? We might have to work longer. We're definitely going to have to work longer. Or we lower our expenses. She's lowered her expenses as much as she can. So we can't lower expenses. So the only other thing that we can do, the only other thing that we can control, because we can't control what the market does, we can't control inflation. We've tried to control our expenses as much as possible, right? But taxes go up, property insurance goes up, food costs go up, healthcare costs go up. So we can control that as much as we possibly can. The only thing we can do is work longer and increase the amount of money that we have saved for retirement. All right, let's go through the detailed software. I want to retire early with $6,000 a month in retirement income. And now we're going to take into consideration those factors that we did not take into consideration on the board because it's just too hard to do that with just a basic calculator. So we need tactical software that's going to help us determine, can we retire with this amount of retirement income, and how long are our retirement investments going to last, and how much do we need in order for that to happen? So let's get into this right now. Now this is a sample case, so this is Drew Blackston, this is me. Retire early with $6,000 a month. How much do we need? So you can see Drew is 55 years old and 6 months. He is retired, and the first factor that we're going to talk about is Social Security. So Drew's going to claim Social Security at 67, which is $2,800 a month. So one of the first questions when we're asking how much do I need to retire early with a certain amount of retirement income, I'm always asking clients, when is Social Security going to start? Because if we start Social Security at 62, we're going to get 70% of our full retirement benefit. If we start at 67, we're going to get 100% of our full retirement benefit. And we start at 70, we're going to get 124% of our full retirement benefit. So we want to maximize our Social Security. We want to be the most efficient. And if we're married, we want to look at things like spousal benefits and how long, again, before we take Social Security when we retire early. So we're going to do Social Security at 67 with $2,800 per month. Now, from an asset standpoint, we're all in 401k and we're at zero. Remember, we're asking how much do we need to retire? Now, the rate of return we're going to assume, remember we did the two different rates on the board. We did 6% and 4%. So we're going to first assume a 6% rate of return for the 401k, for the cash flows, and for any forced RMD proceeds. So 6% is our rate of return on our investments. Now, we go up to expenses. We want $6,000 a month with inflation of 3.24%. That's something else we can't do on the board. We can't calculate inflation necessarily as great as we can in the software because the software is going to do it daily. It's going to take that 3.24%, divide that by 365, and we're going to have a daily inflation rate on this money. And the reason we're using 3.24, if you look at inflation history, 1914, 1%. 2021, 7%. Take all those years, you average it out, we got 3.24% is the 108-year average Current 10-year average is 2.15, okay? Now, cash flow and taxes we're not going to worry about. Cash flows is if this person wanted to add in vacations, maybe they needed to add in healthcare costs, maybe they needed to add in gifts to children. So we're not going to go to cash flows right now because the $6,000 is covering everything. So we're not worried about that. And taxes, we don't have anything to talk about on taxes yet because we don't know how much we need in retirement savings. So let's go to retirement, and this is going to tell us how much we need. So retiring at 55, 6% rate of return, we need $1,894,255 for retirement to make this money last for the rest of our life. So now we can go back to assets. We can plug in $1.9 million. Let's just round it up. And then we go back to retirement here. And we can say, okay, based on $1.9 million in the 401k, look at this. Here's our net monthly expenses, $6,000 a month. That's what our expenses are. We're getting Social Security right here at 67. That's $2,800. So we've got our Social Security plus our elevated expenses. We're not out of money until 98 years old. So we basically have taken this thing all the way to the end. We know that we need $1,900,000 in retirement savings to make sure that our retirement income lasts forever. All right? So I hope this has helped. God bless. Bye-bye. All right, I got a 56-year-old. He's got $140,000 saved for retirement, and he's asking the question, Drew, when can I retire? Let's look at this right now. So I've got Brian. He's got about $7,000 in the bank. He's got $130,000 in his 401k. And he's got $1,800 in an IRA. He's got $139,626. He just went through a divorce a few years ago, had some financial hardships, kind of spends money like water a little bit. And he said, hey, Drew, I'm ready to be disciplined. I understand that time has caught up with me and I need to save more for retirement. Now he's asking the question, when can I retire? And you might be asking that same question. You might be frustrated wondering, when can I retire? Well, let's look at that for Brian, and maybe this will help you as well. All right, so here's what we got. We've got Brian. He's 56 years old, and he wants to retire at 62. Okay, he works for Aflac. He also does real estate as a realtor. Okay, and we're looking at work until 70 as a realtor. Now, he has a special skill set as a realtor that he can work as long as he wants. Heck, I had a realtor who sold me a house at 83 years old. Now, she wasn't out there grinding, but as a realtor, if you keep your license up, you can continue to do that. So we're going to project that out until 70. Now, from a Social Security standpoint, if he takes Social Security at 67, he's looking at $3,938 per month. If he takes Social Security at 62, he's going to get 70% of his full retirement benefit. If he claims Social Security at 67, he's going to get 100% of his full retirement benefit because he's born after the year 1960. And if he claims at 70, if he's an overachiever, a broccoli eater, he's going to get 124% of his full retirement benefit. Now, keep in mind, you can claim anytime between 62 and 70. For Brian, let's look at this. If he were to claim at 62, it'd be $2,757. That's 70%. 63, it's $2,954. 64, it's $3,150. Now, here's the thing. We're going to project out taking Social Security at 67. Now, I understand that this number, this 3938 right here, is going to change over the next few years, right? You're going to have COLAs. He's going to have earnings credits go to that. So that number is going to continue to get bigger and bigger.
Now, Brian's doing a financial EKG with us. We're going through the process. We're going to update that number on an annual basis. As we do our quarterly reviews, as he's getting his annual Social Security statement, we're going to be able to go into the system, update that number so we know that it's going to be higher at 67 if he claims then. And so we've got to always have an awareness of some of the things that are going to be changing and the nuances in a financial plan. So it's not a set it and forget it like a Pillsbury Doughboy. This is an ongoing adjustment throughout pre-retirement and into retirement, right? We want to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. If you want more information, go to the description below. We'd love to work with you as well. All right. So assets. We've got $7K in the bank. We've got $130 in the 401k, and we've got $1,873 in an IRA. Now, in his 401k, he's doing a 16% contribution. He gets an 8% match from Aflac and also a 4% match on his bonus. So he gets about a 12% contribution right there throughout the year, which is really, really nice going into his 401k. But as you can see, he's been through some stuff. He told me straight up he's been divorced. He likes to spend money on shiny things. And so his comment to me, without using colorful language, was he needs to get his junk together and start saving more for retirement. And he threw some colorful words in there that really enunciated what he was trying to say to me. Now, his home is worth $300,000. He lives in Georgia. And so we're looking at a total asset currently of $300,000 in home and $139,000 in spendable assets, which total asset is $439,626. Now, let's go through expenses. Now, Brian is a single dad. He's an older dad. His daughter is 7 years old, so he's a little bit of a late bloomer when it comes to being a dad. Doesn't matter what age you become a dad. It's the most wonderful experience ever. I think Abraham was 100, right, when he became a dad. I have 3 children. And it is the most wonderful experience that God has ever allowed me to do. Now, expenses pretty simple. We've got a mortgage, $1,672. No inflation on the mortgage. You guys see that? No inflation on the mortgage. We're looking at about 18 years of a mortgage payment. Okay. Baseline expenses, $3,700. So baseline expenses are going to be food, gas, electricity, streaming bill, property insurance, property taxes, things that are going to be there with you in perpetuity, right? Forever. Like you're always going to go to Publix or Walmart, Trader Joe's, Myers, Safeway, whatever grocery store you can name. Put that in the comment section. I always love hearing the local places, Horrocks. Wherever you're going to go, you're going to have food, hopefully at 90. And hopefully it's just not like hooked into your veins at that point. He does have alimony of $300 a month, and we're doing that till 2036. Health insurance at 62. He wants to retire at 62. Got to have some health insurance from 62 to 65. That's 2031. And we're going to look at this forever. So we're going to look at this as health insurance pre-Obama, like pre-65, so Obamacare, and then post-65 Medicare, okay? Food, entertainment, gas, $600. We line item that because he wanted to pull that out of baseline. So normally we'll put this number into the baseline, but he wanted to pull that out, which is fine. So we got a total expenses of $6,272. Now, taxes. Currently, he's in the 24% tax bracket, 15.4% projected federal rate. Now, here's what we've got. His wages are $223,680. Remember, it's split, right? If you go back to his income, we've got salaried income. This is salaried working for Aflac. So you can see the tax for Social Security is 6.2. For Medicare, it's 1.45. You see that? Okay. Now, for his real estate, he's 1099. It's commission, right? He's a sole proprietor. So he's self-employed. So his tax on Social Security is 11.45 and 2.68. So we've got a higher FICA because we're self-employed. So we want to make sure we calculate that in because that's a big deal. You got to pay that, right? Now, you don't know where the government's doing with it. They just kind of take it and spend it on whatever, but you still got to pay it. So wages are $223,680. Qualified contributions, $23,731. That's his 401k contribution.
Gross income's $198,974. Now, his deduction is $41,500. Now, you might be saying, Drew, he's single. His deduction's only $15,000 or whatever it is in the year that you're watching this. $41,500 is wrong. Well, actually, because he's self-employed, we're itemizing some of his deductions, right? So $41,500 is what he's itemizing. So we're able to put that up here. And he's going to continue to do that until he's 70 or beyond. So we're just going to assume we're going to have these deductions because he's going to be working a little bit longer than we expect. And we can also add tax credits and deduction changes. Again, the reason I'm not getting too head over boots on this is because for Brian, just like you, this is something we're going to have to look at on an annual basis. Like we can't just go, hey, Brian, here's your plan. I'll see you in 15 years. No, Brian, I'll see you in like 12 months or I'll see you in 4 months. Like we need to update this to make sure that we're staying on track. Again, you want more information, go to the description below. Let's get your EKG put together. Now, pre-retirement, we're going to assume that from 57 to 62, we're going to have our AFLAC job. And then from 63 until 70, we're going to be doing the real estate. And you might have already seen what's kind of going on over here. So what we've got is some positives, some negatives, and some things we're going to work on. Okay. So here's our current gross monthly salary, AFLAC, bonus, and real estate. And obviously real estate doesn't come in on a monthly basis. It's commissioned. He averages about $50K a year and it comes in sporadically, but we line item it. The bonus comes in twice a year, but again, we line item it. Okay. So we are positive net cash flow of about $6,000. You see that? Okay. That means that he's spending over and above his budget $6,000. Now, I did mention he has a young daughter. Now, I love my kids. We spend money on my kids. I get what he's doing. But he also told me at the beginning of our conversation, I spend money on stupid blank that I shouldn't. And I need to be more disciplined. And so again, that's what we're looking at. How can we become more disciplined and save more for retirement? Okay. Now we go up to retirement and essentially he's out of money like 71 years old. This is not a good scenario for him if we stay within this current scenario. But thankfully, we're not going to do that because our job is to get you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay there. Now, I don't have any pixie dust. I'm about an hour and a half from Disney World. I can go pick up some pixie dust. I've had some thrown at me in my hair at Disney. It doesn't do anything. I wish I could fly. You can fly. No, you can't fly. I'm sorry. You can't fly. I'll fly one day. I'll fly away, right? Boop, I'll be gone. But at this point, I ain't flying. So we have the current scenario. The other thought is, can we increase his contributions? So this scenario right here is what I want to look at. We've got some contributions and we've got a little bit of working longer. So let me show you what we're doing to help Brian. Let's go to the end of this real quick just to show you. So remember 71 was when we were running out of money at the last scenario. We're going to run out at 81 in this scenario. But I want to show you we're getting to where we need to go. Okay. So let's go to income. So here's AFLAC. Here's the bonus. Here's real estate. Now what I want you to notice is at 62, he's going to stop working from AFLAC and he's going to start doing more real estate. So we're going to say he can double his real estate because he's not going to have any AFLAC work and it's all going to be focused on real estate and he's going to do that until 70. Again, he could do it longer, but we're just going to say until 70. So we're going to say he's going to make 100K on that. Same primary Social Security benefit there. What we're going to do asset-wise is we're going to bump up our contribution. So we took it from 16% to 21. So we're bumping this up. We're going to try to get as close to the max contribution that we can. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to start contributing to an IRA. Now his income is a little high for IRA contributions as a single person. So what I told Brian is I want you to go talk to your CPA about doing a SEP IRA, an SEP IRA that you can do as a self-employed person, because he would be allowed to put in money based on his earned income from his 1099, the $50,000 that he's earning in real estate. He's going to have that conversation. He's going to come back to me and then we're going to put those numbers in. Because I think we can put in about $12,000 based on his income, his real estate income, into a SEP IRA. He has that option because he is self-employed in real estate. Now, he doesn't have that option if he's just AFLAC. In that case, we would have to be thinking about putting money into what we call a freedom fund,
a non-qualified brokerage account, okay? So in this point, we're going to put about $8,000. We're just going to section off about $8,000 to go into a SEP IRA, okay? Now, we're going to increase our contributions. We're going to work till 62 on Aflac, and then we're going to bump up our real estate. Our expenses are going to stay the same. What does that do? That gets us to 81. All right, we are on the right track. We're moving in the direction that we want to go. Sometimes it's not about getting the plan perfectly set at 56. Sometimes it's about getting moving in the right direction, right? Sometimes you just got to go to the gym and you just got to lift the 10s. And you go, okay, I got the 10s. And you get that habit going, right? Brian was asking me, Drew, should I pay off my home or should I keep saving more for retirement? Because I don't really want to pay off my home because I feel like I got to save more for retirement. We start looking at all these things. I said, listen, let's just get into the habit of saving more. And then we'll start getting into the nitty gritty of paying off the home and doing things like that. All right, let's go to the last scenario for Brian. Okay. Last scenario, last but not least, working until 65. I know you don't like it when I do this, when I tell somebody to work a little bit longer. But again, I can't see the future. Only God knows the future, right? And I don't know the future. And so for Brian, I've got to have some kind of assumptions to work on to make his money last longer than 81. Now, he could die at 63. I know a lot of you like to leave comments. People don't live past 62. Well, the average male lives to about 77 and a half or 82, depending on what data point you look at. I just got off the phone with a new client. He's had prostate cancer and open heart surgery, and he's 54. So his viewpoints on life are a lot different, right? He's like, I got to retire. I've got to enjoy life. And I get that. Our life is short, right? The Bible says we are all grass. But I don't know the future. Okay. So in this case, we're going to work until 65, okay? We're going to keep getting our bonus until 65. We're going to continue to do the normal kind of half real estate until we're 65, but then 65 to 70, we're going to bump it up and really work hard doing real estate, okay? Our Social Security benefits staying the same. Now let's go to retirement. 89 years old is when we're out of money now. Now, we kept our contributions where we were at. Let's go to red line solves here real quick. Let's look at what if we decided, and the reason we're taking Social Security at 67 is because Brian's single. I want to try to get him the best bang for his buck when it comes to Social Security, because me, myself, and I, right? And so there's no other part. He did tell me he'd like to find a sugar mama, not because for money, but for health insurance benefits. And I said, you know what? You're the first person to ever tell me that, Brian. Social Security. So the software actually says take it at 70. Let's see what the difference is there. Look at that, 89 and 92. So that would be a conversation we would have. We would say, hey, Brian, let's look at this. Let's save and add this to the scenario. So Brian, what if we took Social Security at 70? Look, it only drains his assets. He's still got $1 million there. And we're out at 92. And again, there's a lot going on in this scenario. I'm only running the rate of return at 4% for his money. If he gets 6, 7, 8, it's going to be even better. So I know a lot of you get frustrated. You look at your 401k balance. It says 130,753. Let me tell you this. It ain't over until the fat lady sings, right? Isn't that what they say? That ain't over yet. I want you to keep pushing on. I want you to keep contributing. I want you to look at your accounts and say, I can do this, right? We can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. You can save more. You can contribute. You can do the things that you need to do to get to retirement. And we want to be here to support you in that. So thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. Are you saving too much for retirement? You just might be. And you might be not retiring at a certain age because you think you don't have enough saved for retirement. That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I want to go through some hard data to determine, are you saving enough for retirement or are you saving too much for retirement? Because I want to get you
into retirement. I want you to get you into enjoying your retirement. And I don't want you to feel the pressure and the stress of saving too much for retirement and not enjoying what you've worked so hard for. Now, the RAND study just came out with new data that said retirees spend about 1.8% less in retirement per year. That's 1.8% less than you think you're going to spend every year when you go into retirement. Another study shows that we spend about 20% less more in retirement every year. So which is it? 1.8% less or 20% less? It's probably both, and it's individualized based on your specific situation, your family needs, your spending requirements, your health care, and what you want to do in retirement. So first of all, let's talk about some of the rules of thumb you need to consider when saving for retirement. Then we're going to get into what the average retirement spending looks like, and then we're going to talk about how you can save more for retirement. All right, there's 3 rules I want to touch on when we're talking about saving for retirement. The first rule is the 80% replacement rule. The second rule is the 25X rule. And the third rule is 15 to 20% rule. Now, the first rule is the 80% replacement rule. Now, the 80% replacement rule is simply this. When you're saving for retirement, you want enough in retirement savings to replace 80% of your current income. Now, this is an older rule that I believe needs updating for today. Now, considering Social Security, considering your pensions, considering any kind of guaranteed income that you might be getting, maybe an annuity, maybe some sort of alimony, whatever, you need to consider how much should I have saved to replace the income that I'm going to need. Many individuals today, the average salary in America is about $55,000 a year. You usually step into retirement and the average family spends around $55,000 a year in retirement income. So their replacement ratio might be 1 to 1. Or you might be somebody who has a family, each of you making $55,000 a year. That's $110,000 in income. And when you retire, you're only going to need $55,000 a year. That's a 50% replacement ratio. That's why I say the replacement ratio is based on your individual and family needs, but it's a great rule of thumb to use when shooting for how much should I have saved for retirement. Now, the second rule that we look at when thinking about how much should I have saved for retirement is the 25X rule. Now, the 25X rule is probably the most popular saving rule for retirement savings. It's one that I like to use for my clients, and it simply says this: take your current expenses, multiply those by 25, and that's how much in retirement savings you need. For example, let's say your current expenses are $50,000 a year. Multiply that by 25, that's $1,250,000 in retirement savings. That's how much you're going to need saved for retirement. It's a great foundation to your retirement planning. Obviously, Social Security, pensions, and any other forms of guaranteed income need to be factored into that, which would bring down how much you need saved for retirement. That's why you need a financial plan that is unique to you, that's unique to your individual needs, because you might not need 25 times save for retirement. I have a video right now here on YouTube saving $150,000 for retirement. That might be you. You might be $1.5 million. I don't know, but your individual circumstance is going to determine how much you need saved for retirement. And if you would like a financial EKG, if you would like a comprehensive financial plan, go to the description below. Let's get together. Let's discuss your individual needs to see about getting you to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. Now, the last rule I want to talk about when saving for retirement is the 15 to 20% rule. Now, the 15 to 20% rule is a great starting place for many people if you are not saving enough for retirement. And that simply is this: you want to be saving 15 to 20% of your gross income every year. So if you make $100,000 a year, you want to save $15,000 to $20,000 a year in some sort of retirement investing account. Now that could be a 401k, it could be a 403b, it could be a TSP, it could be a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, it could be a brokerage account that you have with Charles Schwab or Vanguard or whoever. It doesn't have to be your 401k, and it doesn't have to be all in the same account. For instance, personally, I have a SEP IRA account because I'm self-employed, but I save also in a non-qualified brokerage account. And that's my 15 to 20% that we save for retirement every year. A portion goes into my SEP for my pre-tax contribution, and a portion goes into a non-qualified brokerage account, which is an after-tax contribution, which I call a freedom fund, and it allows me to put the contributions wherever I want. It doesn't matter the actual vehicle. What matters is, are you saving the percentage? Now, based on your age, your income, that's going to determine Roth IRA versus traditional IRA, Roth 401k versus 401k, Roth conversions. All of that gets done in the nitty-gritty of the financial EKG. The first step is saving the 15 to 20%. So income replacement varies by age, it varies by family circumstances, whether you're single or married. So let's take a deeper dive into the average spending in retirement. All right, so what is the average spending in retirement based on age? Well, let's look at this based on hard data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I want you to notice where individuals are when they're spending in their 40s and 50s, 50s and 60s, 60s and 70s, and 70s and beyond. And we're also going to talk about the 3 top categories that you will spend your money on when you retire. So let's get into the data. Ages 45 to 54, the average retirement spending is $60,524. Now keep in mind, between the ages of 45 and 54, you're not on Social Security. So if you retire at 50, or you want to retire at 50, you have to keep in mind that this $60,524 is going to come from your retirement investments. And you're not going to start Social Security until at least 62. So if you retire at 50, you have 12 years before Social Security is eligible to start at age 62, 17 years before you reach your full retirement age at 67, or 20 years before you get to 70, where you'd get 124% of your Social Security benefit. So that's something you really want to think about if you're wanting to retire in between ages 45 and 54. Now, from ages 55 to 64, the average retirement spending is $55,892. Now, between ages 55 and 64, what happens? Well, for one thing, you become Social Security eligible. The majority of individuals who are claiming Social Security begin claiming at age 62 or immediately when they retire. Now, the average retirement age today, or the average age people are retiring and claiming Social Security, is 64 years old. So, somewhere in this range, you are claiming Social Security. So this $55,802 is coming from a Social Security source as well. So you're not pulling all of your retirement income from retirement investing accounts. Now, the next age range is 65 to 74. The average spending in retirement is $46,757. Now, notice how from 45 to 54, we're at $60K. 55 to 64, we're at $55K. 65 to 74, we've actually gone down to $46,000. Now, keep in mind, from ages 65 to 74, you are on Social Security. You are on your pensions. So a lot of this spending is coming from your Social Security, maybe a pension, maybe an annuity, something like that. But you notice how these values are going down. What happens with Social Security COLA increases? They actually increase. So as your spending is going down, Social Security COLA increases are bringing up your Social Security or your guaranteed income source, and so you're able to you don't have to pull out as much income from your retirement investments. That's huge as you get older, which is why you want to have a financial plan when it comes to where am I pulling my retirement income first, How is that retirement income going to get to me? What are the taxes going to be on that money? And how is it going to be invested? Now, ages 74 and older, the average retirement spending is $34,000. Now, keep in mind, at any time, you might lose a spouse, you may be single, your numbers might be less. But you see how the spending continues to go down. Now, there's 3 categories that are the highest spends for all retirees. The first is housing, your home. That's going to be your largest cost if you have a mortgage. But also, maybe you're a renter. That's a big cost. Taxes and insurance. Maybe you own your home outright. Those taxes and insurance don't go away, and depending on the state that you live in, I'm in the great state of Florida, taxes keep going up. And property insurance, whew, you talk about hurricane damage, man, our property insurance has gone through the roof. Tallahassee, y'all need to do something about that. Now, the second biggest spend is healthcare. Now, these can be flipped. Home and health can also be flipped, because keep in mind with your healthcare, if you retire before the age of 65, you're going to be on Obamacare or the exchange. And so you're going to pay a monthly premium for health insurance. Once you get on Medicare, you are going to pay a monthly premium depending on the type of plan you choose and also coming out of your Social Security check, but it's going to be much less than when you're on the exchange. And if you have a spouse or children who are still required to be on your insurance or they need insurance, then your health care is going to be the largest expense in retirement. How do you plan for that? And thirdly, it's food. Hey, Bureau of Labor Statistics says it. Food is the 3rd largest spend in retirement. And I know this. I go to Costco. I see the cost of ribs and raspberries and radishes and anything else that starts with an R. And so food is a huge expense, which is why when we're looking at these numbers, you want a financial EKG. You want a comprehensive retirement plan so you know, can I retire at 60? Yes, I can, and I'm not going to run out of money because we're going to project out inflation, taxes, market returns to make sure you get to retirement, through retirement, and protect your ability to stay in retirement. All right, let's talk about the steps that you need to take in order to start planning for retirement. I don't care if you're in your 20s or 50s, these are the steps that you should take to plan your retirement. Number 1, you need to be saving 15 to 20% of your gross income every year, no matter what. So if you make $100,000 a year, you want to save $15,000 to $20,000 in a 401k, an IRA, a Roth IRA, a TSP, a 403b, a non-qualified brokerage account. Somewhere be saving 15 to 20%. If you have a 401k at work, a 403b at work, a SARSEP, a Simple, if you get a match from an employer, let's say you get a 3% match for putting money into your 401k. At least put in 3%. Start where you are, but try to work yourself up to 15 to 20%. Have a budget. Cut out some things that you don't need so that you can save for your future. Now, step number 2, 25X rule and online calculators. Let me say this about the 25X rule. The 25X rule says, take your current expenses, multiply those by 25, and that's how much you'll need saved for retirement. Keep in mind, if you're 25, that number is way off based on inflation. If you're 55 or 60, that number might be a little closer, but you still got to calculate in inflation, healthcare, home, taxes, insurance, all of that stuff. So that number could be too high and it might be too low depending on where you're at in the age range. That's why I like online calculators. There's a lot of free ones out there to use, but keep in mind your individual circumstance, your family history of health, finances, whatever, is going to determine how much you need saved for retirement. That's why all of my clients get a financial EKG. Whether we are managing assets for someone or whether we're just putting a plan together, we want a financial EKG because that's going to give us the most accurate projections and it's going to update yearly so that we know, hey, are we on track for retirement? Or now that we've stepped into retirement, are we staying on track? Now, the third step when planning out your retirement, assume a decrease. Now, what do I mean by that? Assume a decrease in your spending. We know that the average spending in retirement is about $55,000 a year, but we also know that the average retiree spends 1.8% less per year in retirement spending. So if you're stepping into retirement, assume that you are not going to spend as much. Now, keep in mind, you might retire at 60, spend a lot on traveling the world, going to Italy, France, maybe Texas, it's its own country. So you're gonna travel a lot at the beginning, but as you get older, you're not gonna travel as much, right? You might get into your 80s, be perfectly healthy and just say, you know what, I don't wanna deal with TSA. I don't wanna deal with the gas stations. I don't wanna deal with driving down the road. That's fine. So assume a decrease. And the fourth step to planning out your retirement is get a plan. We call it a Your Financial EKG. It's a comprehensive financial plan. You want a comprehensive financial plan. If it's not from us, you want to go on Fidelity, Vanguard, somewhere to have a plan. Excel, a piece of notebook paper, whatever, have a plan. If you're going to drive from Tampa, Florida to Miami, Florida, you can say, yeah, we're just going to go south. But if you just go south, you might just run into the Everglades and get eaten by a crocodile. No, you need to follow a specific map. You need to make sure you're going to get to your destination, and the same is true for your retirement. All right? Well, hey, thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. How much will my taxes be in retirement? That's what I want to talk about today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel, because I think the answer will surprise you on the low end. How much will my taxes be in retirement? Well, a recent Business Insider article said that the average taxes in retirement for someone who makes between $50,000 and $75,000 is right around $4,500 a year. Now, the average retirement income in America right now is $55,000. So we can assume that you're going to pay somewhere between $4,500 and maybe a little bit more in taxes, depending on how much retirement income you need. But is that true? I think we have to go to the sources. And what I mean by sources is we have to go to the source of your retirement income. And when we go to the source of your retirement income, that will determine how much in taxes you're going to pay in retirement. I'm going to show you an example towards the middle of this video on what it would actually look like in taxes, dollar for dollar, for a couple in retirement. So let's look at first the sources of your retirement income. So here we go. We've got the sources of your retirement income here in black for the most part, and we've got in red how those sources are taxed. So we've got your IRA, 401k, capital gains, dividends, interest, Social Security, Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, and municipal bonds. Now, I know that a lot of you get rental property. I know that maybe you have K1s or things like that, but we want to limit this to the most common sources of retirement income. So for an IRA, if you take money out of your IRA, remember your IRA is pre-tax. So if you pull money out of your IRA, you're going to pay ordinary income on that. All right? If you take money out of your 401k, and it's not a Roth 401k, if you take money out of your 401k, that's going to be considered ordinary income. Now, keep in mind, if you have an IRA or a 401k, and you take money out of that before age 59 and a half, and you're not following the rule of 55 or a 72T, if you take money out of your IRA or 401k before the age 59 and a half, you will pay a 10% penalty along with ordinary income taxes. So be aware of that when you're taking out retirement income. Now, capital gains, you have two sources of capital gains taxes. You have short-term capital gains and you have long-term capital gains. A short-term capital gain is simply that you own a stock for less than 12 months, you make a profit on that stock, on that cryptocurrency, on that mutual fund, on that ETF, and you sell it. So you buy a stock for $10, you sell it 6 months later for $20, you made a $10 profit. That's a short-term capital gain, and you're going to owe ordinary income taxes on that money. Now, a long-term capital gain means that you hold a stock, a mutual fund, an ETF, cryptocurrency longer than 12 months, and when you sell it after that 12 months, the taxes that you owe are recognized at 3 different levels based on your income. We've got a 0% level, a 15% level, and a 20% level. The higher the income, the larger the tax will be on your capital gain. That's why it's so important when you're thinking about capital gains, whether short-term or long-term. Can you own this stock? Can you hold this mutual fund or ETF for a few months longer, a few days longer, and move that capital gain from short-term to long-term? All right, so let's look. Dividends. Dividends, like capital gains, have 3 taxable tiers: 0, 15%, and 20% based on your income. Okay, remember, we're looking at the sources of your retirement income, and based on the sources, how they're taxed. Dividends have 3 separate tax structures. All right, interest is considered ordinary income, so interest out of your bank. Ordinary income. Social Security. Now, we're going to dive into Social Security when we look at the strategy for a 68-year-old couple doing tax planning. We've got 3 structures for Social Security, and you're not taxed at 0, 50, or 85%. What Social Security does is they take your Social Security and they use a percentage of that Social Security in the computation of your taxes. Now, I did a video called How Your Social Security Benefits Are Taxed. I'll link that in the video, but we're going to look at how this affects all of this and how this is how you're taxed in retirement. Now, your Roth IRA and municipal bonds are tax-free. Roth 401k would also fall under there, which is why it's so important to try to push as much money into Roth IRAs, Roth 401ks as you possibly can early in your working career. And then once you get retired, doing Roth conversions, which we've done a lot of videos on. Go check those out. All right. So let's get into an actual scenario for a 68-year-old couple asking the question, Drew, how much am I going to pay in taxes in retirement? Hang on right there. All right, let's do a breakdown. How much will my taxes be in retirement? And let's look at a real world example. This might be something that you are going through or will be going through in the future, and you want to have a plan for your taxes in retirement. So let's look at this. We've got a 68-year-old couple, so they're both 68 years old, which means they're both on Medicare and they're both on Social Security, all right? They're married filing jointly, which means they're getting the larger of the standard deductions. Now, if you're single, you get about half of the married filing jointly standard deduction. If you're head of household, something like that, it's a little different. But we're going to look at married filing jointly here. So John and Cindy, John has Social Security of $2,000 per month, and Cindy has Social Security of $2,500 a month. And remember, Social Security is taxed differently than your other income. And we're going to go to that here in just a second. They have an IRA distribution of $3,000 a month. It doesn't matter which IRA it comes from, whether it's John's IRA or Cindy's IRA. From a retirement income purpose and for a tax purpose, it all goes on the tax return as an IRA distribution. And they also have a Roth IRA distribution of $500 a month. So what you do is we take the $2,000 here for John's Social Security. We take $2,500 here, $3,000 here, and we ex-nay this $500. So that means their total taxable income on a monthly basis is $7,500 a month. You multiply that by 12, and that would be $90,000 a year, which would put them in today's tax brackets at the 22% bracket. And you might be thinking, wow, they're going to owe about $18,000, almost $20,000 in taxes in retirement. Not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso says on College Football Game Day. We've got to look at this and ask ourselves, first of all, Social Security is not taxed dollar for dollar. The most Social Security could be taxed is 85 cents on the dollar used as the computation for your taxes. So before we start going through tax planning, we got to first figure out what's the tax going to be on my Social Security, and all those other sources of income are included in how we get your Social Security tax. And how you do that's through provisional income. Provisional income is how your Social Security benefits will be taxed. And basically your provisional income is your adjusted gross income. So all of your income sources plus half of your Social Security benefits plus any non-taxable interest like those municipal bonds. You will pay taxes on those municipal bonds. They're tax-free on the ordinary income level, but they are used in the computation of your Social Security tax. So you need to be careful when you're thinking about municipal bond planning and tax-free income. So provisional income in this case, we've got AGI plus half their Social Security plus half of their non-taxable interest. So for them, we don't have any non-taxable interest like municipal bonds. We just have Roths, which are completely tax-free. And so their provisional income would be $36,000. That's their AGI. So that's their $3,000 a month IRA distribution, okay? So if they have interest, if they have dividends, if they have long-term capital gains, that's all gonna fit into here, or short-term capital gains. AGI, so that's $36,000. Now, $27,000 is half of their yearly Social Security benefit. So it's basically these two figures, which I think is like $54,000. Divide that by 2, and that's $27,000. So $36,000 AGI plus half their Social Security. So let me just do this. AGI, half of their Social Security equals their provisional income. So $63,000 is actually what their tax return is going to show where we're going to start. So $90,000 is how much income they get on a yearly basis. Actually, they get $96,000 because of the Roth IRA. Again, it's really important to try to push as much money to your Roth IRA and Roth 401ks as possible. But $90,000 in taxable income is what they get on a yearly basis. But when we look at Social Security, it goes down to $63,000 for provisional. Now that's the figure we got to work off of to get how much in taxes they're going to owe in retirement. All right, let's finish this up by looking at what they're actually going to pay in taxes in retirement, all right? So remember, our base income, or our base taxable income is $63,000. We got that by doing the provisional income with Social Security, $27,000 in Social Security, $36,000 in IRA distribution. That's how we got $63,000. Now, they're married filing jointly. Standard deduction today is $28,700. That's the standard deduction. If they have more charitable donations or if they have interest or whatever that's more than that, then we would use the itemized deductions. But they have got $28,000 in standard deduction for this example. Now, keep in mind, taxes are going to change in the year 2026. So on December 31st of 2025, taxes are going to change. They're going to go up. You need to be prepared for that. So all of our examples over the next 2 years are looking at the next 2 years from projections. But we don't know what taxes are going to be in the future, which is why it's so important for you to get as much money in tax-free vehicles as possible. Roth 401ks, Roth IRAs. Do it now. Freedom funds, taxable brokerage accounts. Get that money tax-free. That's just my tidbit. Okay, now, that means their taxable income, 63 minus the 28.7 is 34,300. So that's their taxable income. Now remember, we have a progressive tax code. So a portion of this is going to be 0, a portion is going to be 12, a portion is going to be 22, depending on how high you go, okay? So their total tax off of this 34,300 is $4,116, which is 12%. That's what we call their marginal tax rate, okay? 12%. But remember what their total annual income was. What was it? $96,000. That was their Social Security, their IRA, and their Roth IRA, right? That was their income. Social Security, IRA, and Roth IRA, it was $96,000. 6 of that's not taxable because that's their Roth IRA. And then $90,000 is taxable, but you got to use provisional income to get down to what we actually consider taxable according to the Social Security code. So we've got $96,000 a year in total income. We're paying $4,116 in taxes on that 96. So that means our effective tax rate, what you actually pay in retirement, is 4.29%. So stop thinking about what the averages are going to be. Start thinking about what your effective rate's going to be. See if you can push down your effective rate as much as possible. That's what we do here. We do that with our financial EKGs. We want to see how low we can go, with an effective tax rate. Because if we can get taxes low for the future, we know as taxes go up, your income can stay up to meet inflation, to meet whatever needs, healthcare you might have in retirement, but we won't pay the taxes. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. God bless. Bye-bye. I have $150,000 saved for retirement. When can I retire? Well, that's what we're going to look at today on the channel, because if you look at the average saved for retirement, we're going to look at age 50. We are not that far off of what the average saved in retirement savings is. So it's a pretty good chance that you might be close to 50 or a little bit over 50 and have $150,000 saved for retirement. You ready to get into this? Let's go. All right, so I've got Tim. Tim's from Idaho. And I'm calling this the David versus Goliath scenario, because Tim has done everything right when it comes to saving. Now, I know you might be thinking, Drew, he only has $150,000 saved for retirement. Well, Tim has had some curveballs thrown his way in life. He's gone through a divorce. He has also worked really hard to have zero debt. So he has a $250,000 home with zero mortgage. So most of his money has been going towards the home to pay off the debt and not to his retirement savings. And again, he went through a divorce, and anytime you go through a divorce, and you might know this, the assets get split and it's really hard to get back on your feet, but he's done it. So we're 50 years old. We have $150,000 saved for retirement. We have a salary of $85,000 gross per year. Social Security at 67 is going to be $2,658, so $2,658. Now that's at his full retirement age. So if he claims Social Security at 67, he's going to get 100% of his full retirement benefit. We'll talk a little bit more about Social Security as we get through the scenario. His contribution to his 401k right now is 10%. He's putting 10% of his $85,000 into his 401k. He's getting a 3% match from his company on the 401k. So about 13% is going into his 401k. Now, a good rule of thumb is you want to be saving somewhere between 10 and 15% of your gross annual salary every year for retirement, whether that's in a 401k, an IRA, a 403b. Maybe you do a mixture of 5% into your 401k to get your company match and another 5% into a Roth IRA, or 5% into your 401k and 5% into a brokerage account. Whatever it might be, you want to save somewhere between 10 and 15% of your gross. Now for Tim, he's been doing 10% and he's getting a 3% match, so that puts us at 13%. So we're right where we want to be. I would like to get it to 15 to 20%, but we're working with what we're at right now. And again, he's doing a really good job. We have a $250,000 home and there's no debt. Okay, now Tim, when he got divorced, he took on a mortgage and he took on some credit card debt. And so because of that, he really wanted to work himself out of the hole before he started to save for retirement. That was just his thought process, and now we've met and we're going to work through getting him to retirement, through retirement, and protect his ability to stay in retirement. So we've got $150,000 saved for retirement, and this is inside of his 401k. He does have about $10,000 in the bank, okay? Now, he's 50 years old and he's asking the question, when can I retire? He understands that he cannot retire at 55. He's not going to retire at 60. He might not even retire at 65. He's just asking the question, Drew, when can I retire based on conservative projections? If we get market returns of 8, 9, 10, 15%, that's great. Maybe I can retire earlier. But what about some conservative market projections so that I can really answer the question, can I retire? So we've got a 5% and a 3% over on this side. And over here, we're going to have his salary net with taxes and contribution and his expenses. Okay. So what we're looking at is a couple different things. We're 50 years old and we have $150,000 saved. We're going to look at a 5% rate of return on the money in the stock market. So the $150,000 in his 401k, we're going to project out a 5% rate of return. Now, I realize that that is very low. And what I would much rather him do at 50 in his 401k, understanding that we're probably going to have to work 10, 15, 20 years, is to put that money in the S&P 500, a very simple S&P 500 index fund, 100% try to grow it as much as possible. Now, the S&P 500 the last 50 years has averaged about 10%. It's 8% with inflation. So we are projecting 3% lower than what I'm actually recommending that he does in his 401k. And the reason that we are projecting it at a lower level is because I want to be conservative in our projections. Obviously, if things change as we update the EKG for Tim, we can make changes to his retirement plan. But if we project low and it comes in high, we're going to high five and chest bump. But if we project high and it comes in low, he's going to try to put my head on a stick somewhere, right? So we need to make sure that we're doing this in a conservative fashion. Now listen, if you would like a financial EKG, all the information is in the description below. Visit our website. We'd love to help you. So we're looking at a 5% rate of return for the money in the market. We're going to look at 3% inflation. So we're going to put inflation on his expenses, right? Because you know your expenses go up whether you working or not. We talk a lot about on this channel retired, people who are retired and looking at inflation. But listen, I'm working. I went to Costco the other day. I see inflation. The Fed might not see inflation, but I do. And so our expenses are going to have inflation on it too, and we're going to look at 3% for the rest of his life. So his income is $4,700 net. Now, let me explain net to you. Net is after taxes, so state, local, federal, after FICA, Social Security, after Medicare, okay? So that's net plus his contribution of 10%. So $4,700 net is what we're looking at. Net minus expenses is $1,275. So this is what we have left over at the end of each month. Now, I'm not saying that he can't take that money that's left over at the end of each month and repurpose that back into maybe a brokerage account or maybe into a Roth IRA or something like that. But what I would like to see Tim do is to build up his bank account. I don't believe that's enough. What if his AC goes out? That wipes out the $10K pretty quick, right? What if he needs a new car? That wipes out the $10K pretty quick. What I'd like to see Tim do, now that he's really worked hard to be debt-free, is to protect himself, protect his debt freedom by building up his emergency fund. You know, Dave Ramsey has it right. You want to build up this emergency fund. I'd like to see 12 to 24 months in emergency fund savings, because who knows what the future holds. Now, that doesn't mean it has to sit in the bank and earn 0.01. You can put it in a high yield money market. You can, once you build this up, siphon a little bit off, put it into a CD or put it into something that's going to earn some interest. But I just want to see, as a single person, would like to see him build up his emergency fund. And once that gets built up, then we can repurpose some of that money back into the overall market. So from 50 to 60, now we are really working hard because he just paid off his house. We've gotten rid of all the debt. We want to grow these assets. So from 50 to 60, our $150,000 grows to $437,675. That's a lot of money. Contributions, rates of return, we're doing pretty good. Now at 60, we have $437,675. Now the thing that's not going to change for Tim are his expenses. So we've got his expenses kind of down to the bare bone. And keep in mind, there's one expense for Tim that's really expensive, and that's health insurance. And so because of the cost of health insurance, Tim is going to work to age 65, kind of like no matter what, because he doesn't want to pay for health insurance on the exchange. So we know we're going to work to somewhere right here at a minimum, because his expenses are kind of bare boned and he doesn't want to add $800 to $1,000 a month in health insurance. So $437,675 is where we're at today, or at 60. We've got the same rate of return. 5% is our rate of return and 3% is our inflation number. So our income, $5,120 is our net income. We're growing our income about 1%. So he sees about a 1% raise every year. Our expenses have gone up by 3%, $4,724. So look at that. Expenses went from $3,425 to $4,724. His income went from $4,700 to $5,120. So now, each month, we're only saving $396. You see that? That's inflation, right? His income is not outpacing inflation, even inflation at 3%. And so, 60 to 70, at 70 we have $802,603. Now, I'm not saying Tim's going to work till 70. He's 50. This is 20 years from now. Like, I'm 38, 48, 50. I don't even know where I'm going to be at 58 years old. I mean, probably going to be doing this, but like, who knows? Who knows where the market's going to be? So when we look at this, we might be able to retire earlier depending on what market rates of return do. So we always have to be thinking about that. Again, look at this, 150 to 802. And I want to encourage you, if you're younger, if you're watching this in your 30s and 40s, Tim's making $85,000 a year. He gets a 1% increase on his salary. He's putting 10% into his contribution into his 401k. He gets a 3% match. And do you see what compound interest did over 20 years? That's God's greatest gift outside of Jesus, compound interest. You name something that's a greater gift than compound interest outside of Jesus, and I'll talk to you, but that's pretty darn good. So 802, 603 at 70. Now what we're going to do at 70 is we're going to ratchet down our rate of return. It's going to 4%. And the reason we're going to go to 4% is because now that we've retired, we want to be a little bit more conservative. We want our investment allocation to correctly position ourselves so that we're not facing the volatility. I call it the Walt Disney World Railroad versus Space Mountain. If you've ever been on any roller coaster, you know as soon as you get on, like, this is going to be terrifying or thrilling, however you feel about roller coasters. You know you're going to get off, but you don't really know how you're going to get there. And Space Mountain at Disney World, it's in the dark. And you feel like you're flying. Now, it's only going like 35 miles an hour, but in the dark with the sounds, you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm in space and I'm flying. You just don't know where you're going to get off. What we want to do is transition from Space Mountain to the Walt Disney World Railroad. Like, we know we're getting off at Main Street. We know we're getting off at Tomorrowland. We know we're getting off at Frontierland. Like, we know we're getting off at these stops. It's set up. And we want to do that. Now, we're not giving up growth in retirement because we need our assets to last forever, but we just want to be more, what's the word I'm looking for? We want to be more consistent with our overall returns when it comes to retirement investing. Now, inflation is going to stay the same. We're going to keep that at 3%. And so if you look at this, now we're flip-flopping because this is adding money. Now we're taking money out. So now our expenses are the top number, where they were the bottom number before. Our expenses are our top number, and Social Security is kicking on at 70. Now, Tim's going to take Social Security at 70, which is $3,295. So I know what most of you are thinking, or maybe some of you are thinking, why didn't he take it at 67 and invest it? You know, when we looked at the projections of taking the money out and investing it, it didn't make sense at this point. Here's a reason why. If you take your Social Security and you're age 67 or your full retirement age, you can take it and make as much money working as you want. A lot of people or a lot of financial advisors will tell you to take it, or money people on YouTube will tell you to take it and invest it. But when you take it out of Social Security and you invest it, is that return guaranteed? No, it's not. And you might say, well, he could put it in a high yield money market. Making what, 4%? Maybe 4 to 5, that's great. But if he leaves it in Social Security, he's going to get an 8% gain every year. Tim's single, okay? At this point, he might meet somebody, but he's single. And we want to maximize his Social Security payment because it's on me, myself, and I, right? His Social Security income's on me, myself, and I. So if we can get to 70, he's going to get 124% of his overall Social Security benefit. So at 67, you get 100% of your Social Security benefit. If you claim at 62, you get 70%. But if you wait until 70, you get 124%. That's pretty darn good, right? So 6518 is his expenses, 3295 is his Social Security. So his retirement income need is $3,223. This is what has to come out of his portfolio. That's what's got to come out of this 802. And so if we do that for 10 years, at 70 he's at $800,000. At 80 we're at $390,000. We're almost down. We're basically down about $410,000. That's a big drop between 70 and 80, and we're essentially out at 85. Now again, I'm using a very conservative 4% projection. Now, there are some things that Tim can do to help make this better. Budget. He can look at his budget. He's very good at his budget. Can we increase our contribution? Can we increase our contributions? That's one of the things he can do. Keep in mind, he's got this excess money, but I'd like him to build up this bank. Really want to see this get built up. But If he wants to get it to maybe 15, 20,000, start chucking more money into his 401k and we can see more growth. Obviously, we're going to invest this 401k more towards the S&P 500. So we're not going to probably get the 5% that we're projecting. We're probably going to get 7, 8%. And we've talked through some of those numbers and what that would look like. And he might be able to retire earlier doing that, and the money's going to last a little longer. Again, I don't want to guarantee anything. So I'm going to come in on the low side. That's a couple things he could do. Now, another thing that he can think about doing is he can look at working part-time. Oh, I know I just said something that's going to like throw everybody into a tizzy, because he's literally working till 70. Tim's a pretty handy guy. He's actually very handy. He could do things that I only wish I could do with a screwdriver. So he could work part-time in retirement. He could be a handyman. Or one of the things that we talked about was retiring earlier from his current job, maybe at that 65 level, and working as a handyman, making less, and doing that longer. So that's something that we can look at in the EKG. So what if he retired at 65 and we said, okay, from 65 to 75, you're going to do part-time work, doing your handyman stuff. So instead of stopping at 70, we're going to stop at 65, which means the 401k contributions are going to stop. But if he's self-employed, we can start putting money into another investing vehicle, and we're going to do that a little bit longer. So those are things that we can work through to make sure this works for Tim. Keep in mind, 85 at 0, male mortality table right now is 84. Now, I hope he lives to 100. And we also have the house, right, that's appreciating. We're showing a 1% projection on the house. And the only reason I use 1% is because in Idaho, I have no idea what the real estate market's going to do in Idaho. I live in Florida. I have no idea what the real estate market in Florida is going to do. So we put a 1% projection on the house. So if we get to 80, right, we can do a reverse mortgage, sell the house, we could rent, move into independent living. So there's a lot of things that he can do to make sure that this money doesn't run out, okay? So I hope this video has helped you. David versus Goliath. I've got $150,000 saved. When can I retire? Thank you so much for watching. God bless. Bye-bye.